Alright, hi everybody. Hi. Doctor's orders. For you too. Such a beautiful, what a beautiful planet do we have, huh? Look at that. Wow. Wow. We have to do everything we can to protect it, shall we? Right in front of us, we have beautiful indigenous community reservation right in front of me, which I always send them good jujus, beautiful energy, love, protection, discernment, and energy to fight, continue fighting, be the beautiful resistance that they are, and so do you. So I've been processing a lot of situations since July 1st. Carney has literally created PTSD for most scientists, climate people, and activists, but this is something that I wanted to remind the beautiful scientific community that remember that we live in a white supremacy system, right? Capitalist. So this is something that if it just started for you, just letting you know that this is something that has been happening for 400 years to indigenous communities, and also Black community has been speaking about this, because most of these data centers and pipelines and stuff like that is always constructed around people of color. They oppress. Yeah. So just remember that when you're doing this type of work, which now is going to be, I see that the trend is coming back. They're like, oh yeah, it's going to be cool to be environmental and climate activists. Yay. But you didn't listen to us 10 years ago when we were telling you this moment right now. And no, we're not, some of us are psychic, but not every scientist. Just you have to follow the pattern and look at history, that it just keeps repeating. It keeps us, it's the same thing. It's because it's conditioned. We're in a system conditioned and programmed not to be really educated. And that's something that I have to, wow. I just saw an eagle. That was an eagle. The wings are so big. Sorry, I didn't even turn around to it. It was majestic that I just, thank you, nature. Yeah, Gaia. I always praise the ancestors of this land, Montreal, Quebec. Anyways, what I was saying before, beautiful ancestors of this land, which that's a sign for a lot of you. For all of you now, like we were saying 10 years ago, I've been saying this, and I was called tree hugger, I was mocked a lot, I was gaslighted a lot, I was, yeah, so it's just what we all talked about, that it was going to happen, because military bombs and stuff like that, that is cause higher CO2 and it creates damages for our planet. And the heat wave and all the situation that is happening right now are consequences of those actions. What do you think? Bombing a specific place for 3 years, almost like Hiroshima type of bombs, and then doing the exact same thing now in Lebanon, the exact same playbook, and what is going on in the Sudan as well, in the Congo, to make these phones and the cars and stuff like that. You don't think that causes damages to our environment? Sorry, I woke up with a stiff neck today too. Didn't sleep well. But yeah, it's been a couple of days where also I'm doing lives on TikTok, Spirit King asking me, so guys follow and stuff like that. I'm gonna try to do on YouTube as well. It's just trying to balance things out, because I'm also like back to work with my beautiful people that I love so much. I love my caregiving job, don't get me wrong, but my activism work has always been kind of like people say, like, oh, it's just a hobby. It has never been a hobby for a lot of us who are real activists and real scientists, and environmentalists, not a hobby. It might look like that, we might make it look easy because we've been doing this for so long, which is why, that's what I'm saying, like now I can look back, be like, man, 10 years ago we predicted this, we show data, we show facts, and everybody thought that we were just like, I don't know, joking or something. I don't know, but then again, now I had to sit down and assess that my ego. One of those ego deaths is recognizing and understanding that these are judging of other people, especially those who are not educated, which is a lot. And also on just like I was looking at most of the videos of the content creators are gonna show up here. I was looking at the comments. Spirit kept asking, look at the comments of these videos, and I've never been asked that before, so I did that, and I was like, oh my goodness. So half of the comments of the videos I'm gonna show you, make sure that you're supporting the content creators, like, comment, share, go to their thing. That's why you look at their handles from either Instagram or TikTok. They have handles. Please do. It's just they don't fit in my description when I put them in thing, but I do want to give them credit. Some of them are surprised when they find that I give them a little bit of I planted seeds, and they're like, oh, of course, I love you. I love what you do, and I want you to continue growing, and I want you to continue thriving financially. You're doing amazing. You know who you are. I'm going to try to do that as much as I can now. I'm trying to find another job so that I can, I'm building the stamina. You know what I'm saying? All those of you who email me, if you're booking a reading, I will get back to you within 24 hours. I'll try. And then I'll send you all the details of how it works, okay? I know that people want to know like specific rate and stuff like that, but for now I'm going, it's going to be affordable because I know people are struggling right now, and I don't want to stress anybody. But if others of you are able to afford my price, it's great. But you can also let me know if you have any situation or anything, and we can work something out, okay? I'm not a bank or anything like that, and I'm anti-capitalist, so communist over here, socialist, so just saying. Although any support that you give me, I'll take it, okay? All this of you, thank you so much for those who sent me back, who responded, telling me that your protection when you send me gifts, and I did protection on you and it worked. I'm glad it did. Thank you for confirming for me. It's nice. Let me know in the comments, you guys, if any other things resonate or anything like that. It's nice to know. I don't know, it feels good. Yeah. Now, what I was saying is that in the past, I thought that it was common sense. I thought that it was common sense that people will have common sense. And as the years pass by, and I realized that it's not common for everybody. Not everybody is treated the same way, the system, but also in terms of education. Not everybody has the chance to go to university. Not everybody has family who can, pay for a full high school education or college or university. So I was very lucky, privileged, really. And even though I don't come from, a family of, aside from my dad, but he doesn't live here in Canada, so it doesn't really, But yeah, and then I noticed that a lot of people, even if you have all the credentials and all the studies and all the stuff, it still doesn't make you like educated. Because I've seen people in the comments who you can tell that they went to really expensive schools and got all this education, higher education and stuff like that, and they're still dumbasses. They're still saying and talking like I don't know, at this point I find like people who are fascists or racist are really low IQ. And most of those people are climate change denials people. So yeah, I saw that. It's weird.
Anytime somebody posts about Palestine, they are making a bet that the world will be better tomorrow, that the meek shall inherit the earth, that justice will prevail, that the people currently being bombed to smithereens will someday rise from the ashes. Scroll back to my last video if you want to see my full explanation of that, but that's what I believe. It is inherently optimistic to be posting about Palestine on these platforms, which are run by people who would like the very opposite to happen. Literally, the content moderators on TikTok and Instagram are basically former spies from the nation doing the genociding. So you have to be pretty gutsy It's like a big middle finger to be talking about things so openly on these platforms. Just watching this video long enough, you're probably already on a list. So when you talk about this stuff, you are making a very proactive, positive choice. Don't let anybody tell you different. The whole reason that I wanted to talk about this topic is because I saw the inverse in action. Seeing Gwyneth Paltrow, for example, advertising luxury condominiums in Israel. Do you realize how insane that is to just come out with that take at this point? I'll tell you why she's doing it. I'll tell you why Kevin Durant and Steph Curry are investing in companies over there that do drone strikes and surveillance, respectively. I'll tell you why Leonardo DiCaprio invested a boatload of money, 10% stake, into a hotel in Israel. That to me is the most egregious because he's got eyes, he knows, he's aware. Tourism over there is off a cliff. The world's not going there on vacation. If you're investing in a hotel, that is a very clear signal, as are all of these people, signaling to the elites, to the billionaires, to the Epstein class, I'm with you. When you place a bet on the people doing the genocide in broad daylight, you are saying, that's what I want to happen. I can imagine a future where the evil ultimately triumphs. These celebrities are not only not your friend, they are betting on your ultimate downfall and subjugation and destruction in the world of tomorrow. Do not follow them. Follow your heart, follow your gut. Keep posting about Palestine until it is free.
Hey, wait. This Canada Day, before your kids take that free RCMP merchandise or picture with the Mountie, please remember this. The symbols of Canada are not neutral. They represent the colonial history and ongoing systems that control and protect settler colonial power. The RCMP's predecessor, the Northwest Mounted Police, was created in 1873 as Canada was asserting control over Indigenous lands, peoples, and enforcing the government policies shaped by British colonial policing models and imperial policing traditions. When we look at policing more broadly, there's a pattern. In the United States, modern policing has its roots literally from slave patrols to protect the interests of state and property. Sounds familiar. And while the context is different in Canada, it helps us understand something bigger. These systems are built to protect state interests first, but they're presented to us as symbols of protection for everyone. RCMP always been involved in enforcing the Indian Act, the federal law in Canada that controls many aspects of Indigenous life under Canadian colonial governance. This included the enforcement connected to cultural genocide policies like the potlatch ban, where the RCMP would participate in raids and arrests and supported the confiscation of ceremonial and cultural items. They were also the machinery to enforce the residential school system. And in some cases, this meant arresting and criminalizing Native parents who resisted the state-sanctioned kidnapping of their children to attend these abusive institutions. During World War II, the RCMP was also involved in the surveillance, property confiscation, and the forced relocation and internment of Japanese Canadians, who were literally Canadian citizens. And today, the RCMP continues to be used from pipelines to resource conflicts to disputes over Indigenous jurisdiction. Many communities and activists have challenged the use of police power against movements asserting Indigenous sovereignty. And we also need to question their excessive use of violence against public demonstrations and political dissent. And in a democracy, the ability to organize, protest, and criticize those in power is supposed to be a fundamental right. So when you see the RCMP celebrated this Canada Day, remember that they are a symbol built on harm and power. This is to make us critical and aware of what our children are being taught to celebrate. Because if we only teach symbols without their histories, without the nuances, we are teaching them to normalize power and racist systems instead of questioning them. Check my caption. I've got some scripts for you, and I also have an e-guide where you can learn how to talk to your children in age-appropriate ways about social justice and global issues. Over 100 scripts. Please check it out and support. Land back. All of it.
Tomorrow is Canada Day, and for many people across this country, it is a day of celebration. Flags, fireworks, pride. But for me, it's a little bit more complicated than that. Because before Canada was ever called Canada, there were already nations here, sovereign nations with laws, languages, families, and ways of life that existed for thousands of years. And what followed Confederation wasn't celebration for everyone. It came with loss of land, of language, of culture, of life, and those impacts are still felt in the Indigenous communities today. So while I understand what tomorrow represents for some, I can't fully celebrate it. For me, tomorrow is not about fireworks or national pride. It's actually a day to reflect, to remember those who came before us, to honor survivors and their strength, and to acknowledge that reconciliation is not just a word. It is ongoing work. And it's also a day to hold space for both truths. This land holds beauty and it also holds pain, that we are still here and we are still healing. So tomorrow I'll be choosing reflection over celebration. And I share this not to take anything away from others, but to offer a different perspective that also deserves to be heard in this country that we all live in. And so if you're listening, I invite you to do something with this perspective. Pause, learn whose land you are on, take one small action that supports Indigenous voices. So that's listening, reading, or amplifying Indigenous creators and communities.
Oh, billionaires earned it. They don't owe anybody anything. Yes, they do. They owe all of society for all of their success. They owe the janitors that clean their building and make sure it's not filthy for their success. They owe the field workers who picked the food so that their employees could eat for their success. They owe the baristas for making the coffee that their workers consume to do the job to make them money. They owe the nurses, the doctors, the technicians for all the medical care that they provided their workers so that they could continue to do their job and earn them wealth. They owe the sanitation workers for cleaning the water so that their employees have clean water to drink. Literally everything in our society is connected, not just locally, but globally. And these rich people owe literally all of society for continuing to do the work that allows them to have the businesses they have and accumulate the wealth they get. So yes, they do owe it to society to give back. They need to give back because without all of us, they would have nothing. Because if the city sanitation workers stopped cleaning the water or stopped taking out the trash, everything would pile up and the water would be gross and they wouldn't be able to have their business anymore. If the burger flippers stop flipping burgers, then their employees don't have food anymore. Whether or not billionaires want to admit it, everything is connected and they wouldn't have anything without all of society working together to continue to make everything go smoothly. So yes, they should be giving back to society. They do owe a debt to society because without society, they would have literally nothing. The war we are fighting is a class war where the rich are trying to pit us against each other over small differences so that we never realize that the true battle is with the bottom versus the top. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I appreciate your face.
Well, and welcome to another day in the United States of unnecessary genocidal war plays. I'm about to show you a video of what happened yesterday, and then we're going to talk about it. The land that is not real triggers huge explosion in southern Lebanon. A massive explosion shook the southern Lebanese village. I'm not going to butcher this name of the village, dear, out of respect for those who live there. As the land that is not real's military claimed it destroyed a 200-meter-long Hezbollah tunnel. The only problem is that there's no verification that Hezbollah was there, dear, but thousands of women and children have died. Now, I'm going to say something that's going to make you very uncomfortable, dear, but the truth is the truth, and that is in the brew, and that's how the fuck I pour it for you. As the headline reads today, that the land that is not real has dropped one of the largest bombs besides a nuclear one on South Lebanon. Just know they're not in this alone. Oh, no. The U.S. was in tow as we send money and weapons their way, and we co-sign their genocidal plays. This is on me and you. So the Republican crew sitting in Congress today, even though the skin may be brown of those women and children, they say their blood is red and it's on your hands. Their blood is red and it is on your hands, as well as mine today. And I cannot abide being tied to an authoritarian regime, to the land that is not real, to those that think it's okay to slaughter, rape, and kill anyone, but especially innocent children, hon. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Just know the fatback, he don't care. He's too busy protecting where he put his hands in little girls' underwear.
So few things that could come out about the IDF's operations in Gaza that I would truly give a shit about. Like, genuinely, the bar is in hell because that's exactly where these people belong.
They're already living in hell. Look what happened today. My first reaction to seeing this video of a literal fucking Holocaust. was, is this new footage or just footage of the last time Israel did this to Khan Yunis? Because Israel's been using weapons of war on tents every year since 2023.
In hell. They are scum of the earth people, and I say this with my full face. I say this with my full chest.
I try to make these videos funny, but it's deeply disturbing that these apps are pushing videos of literal Nazis defending genocides that are happening right now onto our feeds. Like Maddie wakes up every morning and says, I say this with my full face. Time to justify genocide again. Allegedly for money from Israel. Her upspeak at the end of sentences is crazy. It's like her conservative Catholic mind feels guilty for saying an opinion. And that's right, she's not Jewish at all. She's a Catholic who loves Israel, hates Muslims, and really, really loved Charlie Kirk. She has every possible red flag. It's like when the killer in the movie turns out to be the 12-year-old girl. And then I make posts crapping on people like her, and the victims of the genocide message me, and they're so fucking deserving of help. And there's literally like 1 million or 2 people in the exact same really, really, really sad situation. And the budget for pro-Israel content is $730 million. And the budget for helping the victims of the genocide is whatever my unemployed ass can spare. Okay, now's the part where I try to go from depressing to hopeful. These things have been going on for a very long time, but we now have the tools and awareness to do something about it. We were brainwashed to accept mass murder and genocide as normal as long as it was happening to people who don't look like us. And the first and really tough step to getting past that was being like, holy fuck, this shit is so fucked up. So congrats, we did that. And there are a lot of people who still won't make that first step, but we're trying to bring them along, and we're being judgy as hell for those who are unwilling to. So please let us know that Israel burning people alive in tents in Khan Yunis isn't something that happened during the genocide, but is something that is happening periodically during the ongoing 80-year genocide, and happened yesterday. And even though it's happened before and it may happen again, we need to treat this one incident like the historic failure of humanity that it is. And I say that with my whole heart.
All right, we're finally out of the house. Into nature. Let's take a little break, take a little breather. Breathe with me. Okay. Putting my toes in the water, recharging, right? Talking to Gaia, talking to nature, trying to heal. I can't stop crying.
A 23-year-old mother in Gaza was cut in half by Israeli strikes, and the 1-year-old daughter she held in her arms had her skull broken open. So if at any point you thought the genocide in Gaza was over, it's not. On June 29th, families sheltering in the El Mawazi area of Khan Yunis received 4 phone calls from individuals identifying themselves as Israeli military, telling them that they were going to bomb the area. They ordered them to evacuate the area in under 7 minutes. 7 minutes to pack up your entire life, what little you have left, and save your family from imminent bombing. But they didn't even give them that. Less than a minute after the warnings came through, the bombs began to fall. And among those attempting to flee was 23-year-old Diana Abu Daraz and her 1-year-old daughter, Sawar. She was holding her baby, attempting to flee the area that got the evacuation warning. She got roughly 400 meters away before Israel dropped bombs on her. Shrapnel struck her from behind as she ran, and it severed her body in half. It also opened a gash in her daughter's head. It shattered her skull and left her brain hanging outside of her body. Sawar was just days away from her first birthday, and now she's dead. Her uncle, who witnessed the strike, said, "Suddenly I saw Sawar lying on the ground beside me while her mother was still holding her. The blast had torn her mother's body in half, and another piece of shrapnel hit Sawar in the head. Her entire brain was outside her skull. I didn't know what to do, where to go, or even how to move. What I saw was beyond anything I could bear." This is what Israel is doing to the Palestinians, killing mothers and their infants in their arms. It hasn't stopped just because there's a ceasefire in name.
So yeah, I needed to get out of the house, and I love to give reading energies, and I will. It's just that these moments of like nature and pause, and I feel guilty about it, because a lot of people is just not doing what we're supposed to be doing. Like, more of the content that I'm going to be adding here is going to be about Sudan and Congo as well. We need to talk about this.
Border agents confronting migrants in schools, asylum seekers being deported without legal options being played out, detainments without prior contact. We all know what country this is playing out in. Canada. If this news is exceedingly shocking to you, there is a new term that you might want to learn and unlearn. It's called Canadian exceptionalism. The fact that we think we're better in Canada even though our governments do the same shit, just quieter. If, likewise, you are unduly surprised by the advent of data centers in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, the term Canadian exceptionalism might be a good myth to let go of. Also, diversify and support good news sources. They're doing awesome work.
Okay, brace yourself for this one. The Israeli military used a quadcopter to shoot a 10-day-old baby that was being breastfed by its mother. They shot a 10-day-old baby that was being breastfed by its mother. It's just one of the many horrific, verified accounts from an independent report recently published by the UN's Office for the Commissioner of Human Rights, yet again confirming the genocidal intent of the Israeli military. Look, we have a legal framework and a moral obligation to resist these structures of mass violence. And yet, even in our so-called democracies, peaceful protests are met with more violence. Just last night, my friend Ayman, Member of Parliament and leader of the Flemish Green Party, was arrested for peacefully protesting the Israeli flag still mounted on the City Hall of Antwerp. You think that's normal for a so-called democracy to violently crush a protest against a flag representing a genocidal state? Man, times are changing fast, but our resistance will only grow stronger because of it. Oh, and guys, if you appreciate my work, you can buy me the coffee that I rant with. It helps keep the lights on in the studio and put food on my table. Or you can buy some merch. There's also merch. Do the thing! Do it. Do it!
People approach me wearing Zionism is racism shirts in a parking lot not far from here at my favorite vegan joint with my children. And the thought occurred to me, what are my kids about to witness?
Would somebody, anybody, think about her favorite vegan spot? That was an Emmy-worthy performance. Did you hear her go? And the thought occurred to me. Like she's trying to hold back tears. Come on, people. What are your kids about to witness? Let me tell you what your kids are not about to witness. Genocide, being burnt alive, being bombed to death, losing their homes, losing their limbs. Your children have jack all to worry about. So this manufactured fear that you're expressing is doing nothing but making people see you as exactly what you are, an oppressor masquerading as a victim. You have vocally and visibly defended Israel's war crimes, conflating your Jewish identity with Israel to defend it. And if Zionism is racism scares you, it tells the world exactly what you are and what you stand for. And no, that doesn't mean someone should approach you or scare you, but the basis for feeling scared is groundless. There are anti-Zionist Jews who wear t-shirts that say Zionism is freaking racism.
Know anything about me. And my sons would say to me, well, when's the last time you posted that you care about Palestinians? I said, I could tattoo it on my face. There's going to be people who don't care. Like,
Lie. The fact that your sons, who know you well enough, had to ask you when was the last time you said you care about Palestinians, that says everything. Because you have always come out defending Israel. You have always come out defending Zionism. And even your sons know that. You weren't so scared laughing your head off at this comedian making fun of Free Palestine. This you?
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I'm like, this is the new From the Window to the Wall. Yeah, it's a little genocidal, but the beat slaps. You listen to ours, they're awful. Because Jews like to convince you with a bunch of facts and minutia, rather than just sticking to a catchy tune. Right? They're like, okay, guys, we're going to do one of those chants, okay? It goes, when I say X, you say Y. X, Y, X, Y. Okay, here we go. When I say that in 1948 there was a UN partition plan giving a separate state of Palestine alongside a state of Israel, and the Palestinians rejected it and the Israelis accepted it, and then there was the War of Independence, which against all odds we won, and then in 1967 there was the Six-Day War where all the Arab armies attacked us, and again against all odds we won.
I have a question. What do you do to protect something that you love so much? How would you do it? Think about this something that you love so much. How would you protect it? How would you do it? If you know it's in danger, you know the corrupt tyranny is happening, impunity is destroying not just other people's lives and taking it without any regard or anything, super apathetic, colonial as fuck, right? And we try to colonize that shit. We need to heal ourselves so that we can talk to her sometimes. The colonizer did that too. They took your connection with her. ¿Por qué? La madre que? Man, listen to indigenous people and in Spanish. This alone is a Dominican and half Haitian. Like, Dominicans are programmed and conditioned and educated, to be racist towards Haitians. My mom saw that in a younger age and she's like, nah, read this book. She gave me a Haitian book. I'm gonna put it here. So good. I remember I was like, wow. And I love reading. I don't understand why people don't love reading and writing. Creation. Why is that off for you? Mine has never been off. It will never be off. Even if they try. And trust me, they are trying. But I just let them. She has other plans. Do you? When I try and use violence or scare them. Oh no, I work differently. I don't work I just guide people and educate people to take action. Listen to your intuition and take action, not just the intuition. A lot of you just listen to intuition and just stay. You don't do action, don't do nothing. Oh, okay. And it's good too to take a pause and see okay, what is it that I need to do, but do it in a righteous, just conscious way that it can benefit not only yourself but other people. Where is that drive? Where is it? Yeah, there. You need to connect back and get it back. You need that link back, okay? Land back is not just land back. Link. You need to link. Meditate, pray, go to the... You need to honor your mother. How do you treat your mother? I don't know. I worship my ground all the time. I wake up and be thankful and kiss the fucking ground I'm at. And thank the ancestors for keeping me away from any weird ass energy. But there's a lot. And a lot of you just very carefully oh no, it's fine. I don't believe in that stuff. Oh. Demons just feast. Or take over for some of you. And I know I'm indoctrinated. I know of Christianity, Catholic race. Zionist bullshit. Fuck Zionism. Fuck that shit. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. You know when it's fake now. And thank goodness. Free Palestine. I will never want to be like these people, ever. That's why I come here and thank her every day, and the people and the indigenous. They don't really know I do this, but every day when I can, I come. And I just thank, and I just apologize. I feel it. When you sit down and you talk to the trees, trees are older than anything. Sit down. Let her talk. Just sit down. With your butt, you sit, on a rock, water, near water too. You can put your feet or somewhere, like if you can. Others of you, take a plant. Go get a plant, adopt a baby. Go have plants in your house. Start with that. Connect with your mother. Stop relying on AI so much, you know? She's talking to you. Your real mother. Our mother. She's talking to us through us. Coño. Listen. No more pipelines, eh? I am telling you. She's holding by a thread. You feel it. You don't need scientific data to tell you. You feel her. You know her. And no, I'm not showing you this, like, oh, look, I'm living the best life. And no, there's a lot of people suffering everywhere in the world. And it's different levels of suffering. Let's talk about it. No, we want to be capitalists, eh? Okay, let's talk about it. Even the people who are making money right now, they are suffering some type of consequence, some type of situation. Everyone is going through the karmic cycle, the ego death, the night of the soul, the end, the decay of fascism and capitalism. It's gonna be. Everything is documented. They're just trying to delay. It's like climate change. When I started climate change, I felt like I was repeating myself. And here we are, 10 years, almost 10 years later, and we are in the super hot. This guy is signing a deal, literally violence towards working class in our face. The audacity of this evil person having no motherfucking heart. Oh no, I'm gonna make more money, so I don't care. That's literally what he's saying. And no, that's exactly, he literally made a propaganda video. That's lie in your fucking faces. How do you heal from that? Yeah, we have another decolonization to do, which is the trauma of realizing that someone who is supposed to be our leader is a coward, a traitor. But yeah, we're just gonna keep it cool. Like, okay, it's fine. He's obsessed with Trump, you can tell. Gaia tells you too. Ancestors are everywhere. A lot of you, they're giving you information about this guy. He's a fucking psychopath. Would you do that? How did he sleep at night? Thinking that, oh, you know what? I'm gonna put the plug on bettering conditions of air, which, by the way, is really bad. It's getting worse. So a lot of you, your asthma and shit is getting, that's how it starts. It's through disease. Oh my god, colonization is so unsustainable. And this shit, the weapon, the machine. I'm glad that some countries right now are doing this. That's healthy. Remove yourself from Palantir. That's the first thing. But our prime minister, no, they're partnering with them. Like a bunch of fucking fascists, disgusting racists. He is disgusting. Shame. I feel weird. Canadians, like, you don't, like, literally you watching history repeat and you're just like, no, you're smarter. You're educated. You can educate yourself. You're really fast learners. I learned that by interacting with Canadians when they're not in their racist state or Zionist state, which both of them are fucking disgusting sickness. You know it. I'm not here to judge. We've all been imperfect in this rodeo. We're just trying to fix it. We're trying to not get to that unavoidable place that a lot of you don't want to see it. Oh no, it's not possible. Don't put that negativity out there. Okay, bitch, then fix it. Help us boycott, change, slow down, end the fossil fuel companies and the bombing companies. Help us, right? I've been talking about this for 10 years, and this is another thing. This is why I'm like, okay, I have to find ways to defend myself, because at this point people are not really understanding what kind of people we're dealing, and we are so many, but we're not educated, we're not organized, we're not, how do I say this, like, courageous, or we're not motivated, we're tired, and everything is a sign in that place, because the more you guys are this way, uneducated, tired, and not be able to change things that it could change like really fast. I swear to God, like, and divine. I can't believe they try to erase her. That's another ego death. There's many. There's a lot to learn, and it goes in stages, but it's okay, one thing at a time, right? That's why I show videos of other people, other spirit speaks to us in different ways. I'm just learning how to share it. Love you.
Let me ask you something. If you ran the banks, the courts, the media, the military, and the history books, why would you need to hate or be scared of me? That's the question nobody wants to answer that I've had for a long time. Because anti-black racism doesn't make logical sense. And the moment you actually examine it, the whole thing falls apart. Black people live in community with each other and focus on ourselves. So the concept of being so obsessed with another group of people that you have to go out of your way to hate, oppress, violate, talk bad about, besmirch, to validate your own existence, and to reinforce this false hierarchy you've developed in your mind is not only illogical, it's mind-boggling. So what is it about black people that anti-blackness is so much of a part of the fabric of this country that even immigrant populations adapt to it and participate in this very specific type of racism? You'll often hear us say, white people are obsessed with black people. And it's absolutely the truth, because when your entire existence is hinged on a racial hierarchy and that caste system being the foundation of this country, you can't stomach that we have any autonomy over our bodies and our destinies. And that means racism, hate are your only semblance of power over us in modernity. And via colonization, this anti-black sentiment spread like wildfire. White supremacy built a story, a very specific, very intentional story, where the people doing the most damage somehow convinced the world that the people they were damaging were the dangerous ones, and somehow the perpetrators of some of the most heinous crimes around the globe, who have literally changed the face of the world, are the good guys, the default, the status quo. That's a massively successful PR campaign, and it's been running for 500 years. The genocide of the indigenous peoples across the Americas, 60 million people gone. That happened. The transatlantic slave trade, 12 to 15 million people forcibly removed from their homeland, worked to death, bred like livestock, raped and treated like cattle, their children gone, their names erased. The Belgian Congo, King Leopold's regime killed an estimated 10 million Congolese people, hands chopped off as punishment for not meeting rubber quotas. 10 million people. The bombing of Iraq, 1 million people dead. Afghanistan, Vietnam, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, civilian populations gone. And then those same people turned around and called us violent. They called us violent when they lynched black families and brought their children to watch like it was a county fair. And these people are your grandparents today. They bombed Black Wall Street, one of the most prosperous black communities in American history, because we built something. And the sick nature of the white identity is that no black person can supersede them in any way without retaliation. They sterilized black and indigenous women without consent. They experimented on black bodies without anesthesia. They redlined us into poverty and then criminalized the poverty they created. And then they wrote it out of the textbooks, a complete whitewashing of history, to the point where my content even has to exist to teach black stories and history, because if left to white people, their cookie cutter version of history will be the only one known. That's the other part of the operation. The PR rebrands the violence and in most instances completely erases it. You will graduate from an American high school like I did and never learn that Tulsa happened. You'll learn that Columbus discovered a land that millions of people already lived on. You'll learn that slavery was an economic system with some moral complications, not staying terrorist project which led to the original apartheid state of Jim Crow that it actually was. But if you knew the real history, the story wouldn't hold. This is how projection works at a civilizational scale. You cannot commit the crimes they committed and also see yourself as civilized. The human mind cannot hold that contradiction, so you resolve it by transferring it. You make the people you're brutalizing into brutes. You make the people you're stealing from into the criminals. You make the communities you're destroying into the dangerous ones. Anti-blackness was never about black people. It was always about protecting the lie. Because the thing about a constructed arbitrary hierarchy, it doesn't maintain itself. You have to keep building it, keep enforcing it, keep writing it into law, into curriculum, into casting decisions, into sentencing guidelines, into who gets stopped and who gets to walk. A natural order doesn't need that much maintenance because there's no master race. Race was created, and that creation is constantly being challenged because the framework of this racial hierarchies make no sense. Gravity doesn't need a PR team, but white supremacy does. And it has one of the most sophisticated communications operations in human history. It produced the science, literally invented race science to give hierarchy on an academic costume. And those lies have been perpetuated for so long. People constantly throw out the same statements like black people have smaller brains or black people aren't as smart and you have lower IQs. And the list goes on. It produced theology, cherry-picked scripture to tell enslaved people that God ordained their change. And that religion is still used to enforce white supremacy to this day. It produced the criminology, built entire fields of study around proving black pathology while ignoring the pathology of the people writing the studies. There's something so fascinating about white culture to me, and that's the normalization of crimes, but like the most heinous crimes that never get thrown on you guys as stereotypes. The idolization of serial killers that get turned into TV shows and movies. Media moguls and figures never facing consequences for sexual assault. It's almost expected for anyone rich to be into pedophilia right now. How you guys rob poor people, all the blue collar crime, having zero empathy for humanity, and the list goes on. The majority of people in Western societies committing these crimes are white. The majority of pedophiles, white, sex offenders, white, thieves, white, and the people who are putting you most at risk and harm are white people because overwhelmingly, white people kill and commit crimes against other white people. And this is documented and not up for debate. But when all that gets challenged, when the actual data comes out, they call it divisive. They call it anti-white. They call it reverse racism. Because the last move in the playbook is always the same. Become the victim of the story you wrote. So when you tell black people they are violent, I want you to look at the body count. When you tell black people are criminals, look at who built the criminal system and why black people are over-policed and white people get let go with a slap on the wrist. When they tell you black people are at the bottom because of something we did or didn't do, look at every deliberate policy, every bombed community, every stolen acre, story erased, textbook chapter that put us here and kept us here. The most dangerous thing in the history of the world has not been blackness. It has been the people so threatened by our existence that they built an entire civilization around managing it. We didn't do that to them. They did that to us. And I need you guys to always remember that difference. Stay black. Stay blessed. Argentina is the most racist country in Latin America. And I don't say that lightly. It's the sentiment shared by almost every other country in the region. And this World Cup is putting it on full display. Walk through the crowds right now and you'll hear it. America Latina menos Argentina. Latin America minus Argentina.
America Latina menos Argentina. America Latina menos Argentina. Menos Argentina. America Latina menos Argentina.
That's not a joke, Chan. It's the rest of the hemisphere telling on them. Every country that shares a colonial origin story with Argentina, stolen land, trafficked Africans, a war on indigenous life, still refuses to claim them as one of their own because Argentina spent 2 centuries insisting it was European.
I like how Latinos have an agreement that if our own team gets disqualified, we will just root for any other Latino that's still in the game, except for Argentina.
Now this is some real Latino tea. Argentinians are known to be the most racist in the Latino community by far. However you feel, I think overwhelmingly the reputation is that they are the most racist.
And there's nothing I hate more in this world than anti-blackness, indigenous erasure, racism, and then people who blatantly lie about it. I have never encountered a group of people more committed to defending racism than white Argentines online. I made a video about the erasure of black Argentines, backed it with history, backed it with black Argentines speaking in their own words about racism, and you know how they responded? By proving my point. I've been called a baboon, a donkey, a nigger, a CIA agent, my comments being filled with monkey and banana emojis, coordinated copy and paste campaigns claiming I delete the comments that prove me wrong. I don't have time to delete comments. I don't need to. 9 times out of 10, you're doing the work for me, sitting in my comment section demonstrating the exact racism and delusion the video was about. They're akin to Zionists talking about Israel and lying about the things we can see with our own eyes.
Afro-Argentinians have been fighting for visibility for centuries. All the while, their country insists that it's only white and European. And yet, Black history is deeply embedded in Argentina. The tango, African roots. If it wasn't for this, candombe, tango would have never been invented. The famous Argentinian asado. Similar to soul food, it was created by Black women who had to make the best of the scraps given to them. Latin America's most successful racial erasure campaign. Blancamiento, the whitening. From 1880 to 1930, Argentina literally engineered whiteness. The Constitution blocked African and Asian immigration while paying Europeans to come. And to be honest, Argentina was pretty successful in its whitening of society, because how many of y'all are surprised to see this many Afro-Argentines in this video? And that's the thing. People look at Afro-Argentines and assume they're from everywhere, but...
And that's the tell. Racism doesn't run on logic. It never has. It runs on maintenance, and there's a specific sustained psychosis to hold the lie together for 200 years. And white delusion in Argentina is no different than white delusion in any other settler colonial state. It just wears a Boca Juniors jersey instead of a Confederate flag. And when the deflection runs out, it always lands on the same move.
¿Crees que el argentino es racista?
Sí, definitivamente. Pasa algo raro con el argentino. El argentino es racista y como que a veces justifica un poco ese racismo.
Amigo, un argentino, ¿cómo reconoce a un mexicano? Porque son más feos.
Argentina es un país muy racista, pero todavía no nos damos cuenta. ¿Cuántas personas conoces que tienen el tono súper marrón y dicen, no, yo no soy negro, yo soy morocho, ¿no? Yo soy trigueño. Y el término trigueño también lo utilizaron para disminuir el porcentaje de población negra acá en Argentina en los censos, en los gobiernos de Rosas, porque era una forma de definir a los que eran un poco más claros. Ese término se inventó para reducir la imagen afro que tenían los demás países acá en Argentina, y todas esas cosas siguen quedando. Si vos ves, el cuarteto es negrísimo. Este país lo construyeron gente afro, lo construyeron indios, lo construyeron personas originarias acá.
America does it worse. Interesting strategy. Invoking American racism to a Black American as a defense against your own country's racism. That's a confession with extra steps. All I do is talk about America's flaws, faults, and failures around the world. That doesn't mean nowhere else is at fault for doing the same. So let's deal with facts, since facts are apparently what set them off in the first place.
Un hombre negro, una gran responsabilidad, ¿sí? Para luchar por mis derechos, por los derechos de nuestras naciones y dejar el camino lo más abierto posible para acabar con el racismo.
¿Es algo político para usted?
Sí, es social, es político, es cultural, es todo. O sea, en un sistema racista, o sea, no hay plano donde no haya influencia o consecuencias ante un sistema racista.
By 1812, close to 200,000 enslaved Africans had been trafficked into the viceroyalty of the Rio de la Plata, the territory that became Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay. Slavery wasn't formally abolished until Argentina's 1853 constitution, and even that date is generous since Buenos Aires itself didn't fall in line until 1861. For comparison, New Granada, currently Colombia, abolished slavery in 1852. Venezuela and Peru followed in 1854. The United States didn't end it nationwide until the 13th Amendment in 1865. Argentina was not some enlightened early mover. It was mid-packed at best in a regional wave of abolition. At the moment slavery ended, Black people made up roughly a third of Argentina's population. So where did they go? They didn't vanish. They were erased on purpose by policy. The architects have names. This is documented history. Juan Bautista Alberdi, whose writings shaped the 1853 Constitution, coined the doctrine gobernar es poblar. To govern is to populate, and he meant populate with Europeans. He wrote it plainly that Europeans were the masters of America, that without European civilization, the continent would be burning men in sacrifice. That language is baked directly into Article 25 of the Argentine Constitution, which still commits the government to promote European immigration. Then came Domingo Sarmiento, president from 1868 to 1874, who oversaw what historians describe as a covert genocide of Afro-Argentines, pushing black men to the front line of wars, funneling communities into diseased slums, and flooding the country with European immigrants specifically to dilute and outbreed the black and indigenous populations. That is not a conspiracy. That is stated policy, executed by named heads of state. And it worked well enough that in 1993, President Carlos Menem told an audience in the Netherlands that because Argentina abolished slavery early, we don't have black kids. And later at a lecture at Howard University of all places, he called blackness a Brazilian problem. A sitting Argentine president said that at a historically black university. Let that delusion sink in for you. Compare that to Colombia, Venezuela, Brazil, countries that abolished slavery around the same time window and still have visible, undeniable Afro-descendant populations shaping their food, their music, their language, their policies. Argentina didn't just fail to preserve that presence, it engineered its disappearance, then built a national identity, the Paris of South America, on the absence of black people.
Lo negro no es malo. Yo soy negra y no soy mala. Me da bronca sentir que tengo que justificar que soy argentina, porque mis ancestros hicieron muchísimo por este país. Siempre el argentino trató de ser blanco europeo, y por eso mismo siguen pensando que lo negro es malo. Lo negro no es malo. Yo soy negra y no soy mala.
No, there's no people from Africa, no.
Casi todos somos descendientes de italianos o de españoles.
Los grupos en el poder, en Argentina y en otros países de América, trataron de blanquear su población. Eso era el objetivo de modernizar al país, quitando la población indígena a través de matanzas y blanqueando la población negra a través de la inmigración de europeos.
Argentine food still carries that receipt. It's bland, unseasoned, stripped of the spice and flavor every other former slave colony in the Americas kept as inheritance. You can whitewash your census, but you cannot whitewash why your food tastes like nothing. And this isn't just an Argentina problem, and that's the issue I have with all of you guys in my comment section. Brazil runs on the same script with a different accent. Colombia still has to fight for Afro-Colombian visibility. Mexico's anti-indigenous policy runs parallel. Haiti carries the scars of colorism baked by the French colonialism. Every settler colony in the Americas shares the same origin story. Stolen indigenous land, trafficked African bodies, imported Europeans to launder the optics, and every one of them lies about it to a different degree. Argentina just lied about it the loudest and got most people to believe it, including themselves.
No, you guys, if I go to Italy and they start doing this, I'm actually gonna cry. It'll take me back to like when I used to get bullied in Argentina.
You got bullied in Argentina?
Yeah, all the time growing up.
Oh, because that's Argentina's mad racist, huh?
Yeah, I guess they are. They are racist, and they're also like white kids all the time. Because like me and my brothers were the only Asians in the school. Was that a kid? The whole school, yeah, two brothers, and we would always get this. Like this.
So, when the World Cup puts that mythology on a global stage, when the rest of Latin America sings Menos Argentina in the stands, when black Argentines speak on camera about the racism they navigate daily, when the history is sitting in the Constitution itself, the reaction shouldn't be defensiveness. It should be reckoning. Instead, it's baboon emojis and slurs in my comments from people so committed to the myth of a white Argentina that they'll enact the very same racism they're denying in real time to prove me wrong. Racism requires maintenance. It requires a nation to keep lying to itself for 200 years, generation after generation, just to avoid looking at what it did to get here. Argentina didn't lose its black population, it buried it and called the grave a constitution. And as always, stay blessed and stay black. And may the truth set you guys free. The World Cup is the most watched sporting event on earth. And if you know how to read it, it's also the most comprehensive map where slavery and colonialism actually went. Have you realized that there's no black players on the Argentinian team? Well, there's a reason for that. Take a look at France. 21 of their 26 players are of African descent. England, 15, the Netherlands, 14, Belgium and Germany, 9 each. 12 of America's 26 players are black, the product of one of the most successful settler colonial projects to enslave black people. Brazil's entire starting lineup descends from the 4.9 million Africans who were enslaved and brought to that country, the largest destination of the entire transatlantic slave trade. Haiti was at the World Cup, a nation whose people were forced to pay France reparations for their own freedom for 122 years, and Curaçao, an island of 150,000 people, qualified for the first time in history. That island was a regional hub of the Dutch Atlantic slave trade. Most of their squad grew up in the Netherlands, the colonizing country, because that's where the opportunity was. That's not diversity, it's displacement on a pitch. Every team tells you which empire moved which people and where they ended up. You can reverse engineer the entire history of Western colonialism just from the squad list. But then there's Argentina. Argentina doesn't have a single black player on their squad. People treat that like it's a coincidence, and it's not. It's the outcome of a deliberate government-executed program to erase black people from the nation. In 1800, black people were more than 1/3 of Argentina's population, 69,000 people out of 187,000. In less than a century, that number was so decimated that by 1875, the Argentine government didn't even bother counting African descendants in the national census. Think about how intentional that has to be. President Domingo Faustino Sarmiento, who served from 1868 to 1874, was a fervent white supremacist who openly wrote about his desire to eliminate black people from Argentina. He segregated black communities from white ones, denied them infrastructure and healthcare, and sent them to die on the front lines of military campaigns. He imprisoned them on fabricated charges, he executed them. And while he was doing all of that, Argentina's 1853 constitution was actively recruiting white European immigrants from Italy and Spain to replace them. Erase black people, import white ones, call yourself a European nation in South America. That was the architecture of what Argentina was trying to do. And what makes it more sinister is they stole the culture before they buried and killed black people. Shocker, right? Tango, the dance that we all know from Dancing with the Stars, which is Argentina's most celebrated export, comes from black people. The thing that they sell to the world as the soul of their identity was created by enslaved Africans. The word tango itself comes from the gathering places where black Argentines met and danced. The candombe, the African drum tradition brought over through the slave trade, is the rhythmic foundation of the entire genre. Black composers wrote the first tangos, black musicians built the form, and then once it became popular, once Paris fell in love with it, Argentina's ruling class stripped it of its black origins, sanitized it for high society ballrooms, and declared it a symbol of European sophistication. They killed the people, they kept the music, then they claimed the music was never black. A former president of Argentina, Carlos Menem, once said publicly, in Argentina, blacks do not exist. That is a Brazilian problem. A sitting head of state said that out loud. So when you look at the World Cup and you see Argentina is the only squad out of 48 with no black players, understand what you are actually seeing. Every other team is evidence of what colonialism did. It moved black people around the world through slavery and forced migration, and their descendants now play football for the nations that displaced them. Argentina is evidence of what colonialism intended. The complete removal of black people from the national story. The all-white squad isn't an anomaly, it's the goal. It's what every other colonizing nation wished they could do as cleanly. They built their entire national identity, their pride, their exceptionalism, their whole we're the Europeans of South America mythology on graves. And every 4 years, they show up to the World Cup and play like none of it ever happened. Ask the question as to why there's no black players on Argentina's team, even though they're a settler colony in the Americas. Racism. Anti-black racism. Stay black, stay blessed. There is a global script for denying anti-blackness, and once you notice it, you literally cannot unsee it, because anti-black racism is a pervasive global issue, but especially in the European settler colonies. Every time I name anti-blackness in a specific country, the exact same thing happens to me on all my videos. Argentinians have just flooded my comments saying that the history I'm sharing is false. Dominicans earlier this week said racism doesn't exist because we're all mixed. Europeans consistently claim that racism is strictly an American problem. White South Africans point to Mandela and say, we've moved past that. White Americans consistently say, that happened so long ago, why do you always play the race card? Same script, different locations, different accents. White delusion is a byproduct of colonialism and white supremacy. You create the conditions for the oppressed to be oppressed, then gaslight them into believing their history, story, or lived reality is false, or there's more sides to this, so you're not telling the full story. And that's the thing about racism. It never actually makes logical sense. You've been taught a whitewashed version of history that softens the reality to make it easy for you to accept, all while the very people that are oppressed are fighting for visibility. But arguing publicly and vehemently that racism and anti-blackness doesn't exist is a choice. I experienced this firsthand yesterday when I posted a video breaking down the deliberate historical erasure of black Argentines. The comments flooded instantly with white Argentinians telling me that I didn't know what I was talking about, asking how dare an American talk about history when America has its own issues and meddles with the world. Yeah, America absolutely has an atrocious record of racial violence. I talk about it all the time. And this country absolutely meddles in global affairs, things that are absolutely true. But a nation's history cannot be challenged just because of who's telling it, especially coming from me, the product of slavery and colonization. There's no one better to bring attention to anti-blackness and black history. I truly believe that the deflection is worse than the history itself, because what they are doing is running the classic European playbook. Every single European settler colony uses the exact same defense mechanism. They want to make it seem like race and anti-blackness are strictly American concepts.
I am proud of being an Argentinian, but it's really hard for me because I always have to explain why I'm black.
Argentina has built its identity on whiteness, but Afro-Argentines are pushing to restore the country's black history that the government has largely suppressed.
There was a discourse of genocide because governments say that we don't exist. Schools erase us from history. So Argentina is said to be white, to be culturally and to look white, phenotypically white. So that's why it was discursive, because we are still here. People think that we don't exist. Argentine people ask us where we were born. Not only in Argentina. If I go to Brazil, if I go to Uruguay, if I go to the US, people don't believe my nationality. They don't believe I'm an Argentinian.
But let's be clear. America did not invent the concept of race, Europe did. And those same Europeans settled all of the Americas, including Argentina. Europeans constructed the global hierarchy of race to justify global subjugation, the transatlantic slave trade, and colonialism. They coded anti-blackness into the global fabric, exported it to every corner of the earth, and now they want to pretend it's just an American monopoly so they can look their noses down at US politics while sitting atop of these countries and wealth built by said racism and colonization. The reason these people come into your comment sections with such confidence, the reason they genuinely believe what they're saying is because they were taught to believe it. This is strategic historical amnesia, and it is as deliberate as the violence that came before it. The oppression and the erasure of the oppression are the same project.
As someone with a non-white Argentine mother, and also as someone who has seen how Argentine society treats non-white Argentines, I will be supporting Cabo Verde on July 3rd.
In Argentina, black people were over a third of the population in 1800. They fought the wars of independence. Then the government launched an official systematic whitening project to get rid of the indigenous and Africans to make way for them to become a white nation. They subsidized European immigration and invited Nazis and criminals, offering asylum to people who believed Aryan white people were above all others.
With its bustling theater, cafes filled with intellectuals and streets buzzing with activity, the Argentine capital was known as the Paris of South America, a haven for talent and creativity in an ever-changing world. But behind this facade of prosperity and progress, a complex and evolving reality was hidden, as in the midst of political and social tensions, and in a context of growing influence of Nazism in Europe, Argentina faced its own challenge, the rise of extremism and intolerance on its own soil. On November 23, 1938, at the Luna Park Stadium in Buenos Aires, known for its sporting events and entertainment shows, it became the epicenter of an ideological demonstration that would arouse both passions and concerns, due to the fact that thousands of people gathered outside the stadium, coming from different social strata and with a variety of motivations, to be present at that historical moment. Inside the stadium, the atmosphere was electric, charged with emotion and fervor. Attendees gathered to hear speeches and messages celebrating Nazi ideology and glorifying Adolf Hitler's regime.
Sent Afro-Argentines to the front lines of wars, let yellow fever devastate black neighborhoods, and literally wiped African ancestry off the census. It erased a third of the country, rewrote the history, and now the modern population genuinely believes their country never participated in the slave trade at all. They use the defense of "we don't have racism here" because they think they successfully eliminated the people. The Dominican Republic ran the same exact play. After Trujillo's regime massacred tens of thousands of Haitians in 1937, they immediately embedded anti-blackness into the national curriculum and repackaged hatred as Dominican patriotism. So when Dominicans tell you there's no anti-blackness, they aren't lying for the most part. They were lied to, and they genuinely believe that. South Africa did it in 1994. They rebranded apartheid as the Rainbow Nation, building a curriculum around sameness so white students wouldn't feel guilty, but they left the stolen wealth and the geography completely untouched. The townships are still where black people live, they just gave it a prettier name. And it's the same exact thing happening right now in the United States, in America, as the MAGA movement strips black history from American classrooms. You manufacture the conditions, you write the history books, you launder the wealth, and then you tell people who built the country that they are being divisive for bringing it up. That is white delusion. And when you break down the history, like I do, and you tell these truths, the white delusion leads to deflection.
So Mehdi Hassan had an interesting response to someone pointing out something at the World Cup. So this person said, what's the point of even watching the World Cup anymore? In 20 years, it'll be France's Africans playing Spain's Africans, playing Italy's Africans. Pointing out that when you look at teams like France, it's not French people. It's the African migrants that come into the country. So Mehdi Hassan says maybe the Europeans should have thought about all of that back when they were colonizing Africa in the 19th century. Mehdi, for one, what does that have to do with modern times? What does all that 150, 200 years ago have to do with France allowing unlimited migration in now? Are you saying the people of France that had no part of that at all deserve to have this happen to them? They deserve to have their country taken over? And can anybody honestly say, like, was Africa good before the white people came in there? Like, do you guys think Africa would be prospering right now if white people just never went to the continent?
Well, Senegal and Cameroon don't have any white people on their teams. And I can't believe people are this willfully obtuse or just quite frankly dumb, because Africa didn't do that to Europe. No African empire sailed to Portugal and packed 15 million Europeans into the bottom of ships. No African nation colonized the Americas, killed 60 million indigenous people, and then needed to import a replacement labor force. No African kingdom drew borders around European nations, stripped them of their resources, and then told them the only path to economic survival was to migrate to Africa. So when people look at the World Cup bracket and say, well, African teams don't have white players, that's the point. That asymmetry is history. The reason black people exist in every country in Americas and across Europe is because whiteness went everywhere first with violence, and black people followed in change or in a pursuit of the opportunity that colonialism made impossible to find at home. They gaslight us into spending our energy proving oppression exists instead of dismantling it. They deflect by pointing fingers across the borders so they never have to look in the mirror. That is not a failure of white supremacy. That's white supremacy working as it was designed. The denial isn't separate from the oppression. The denial is the oppression. It's just the next chapter. Buenos Aires, Santo Domingo, Cape Town, Paris, Washington, D.C. The uniform changes, the playbook stays the same. And until my last dying breath, I will always, always, always call out anti-blackness, share black histories, tell black stories, because according to you people, nothing that ever happened to us ever happened or just wasn't that bad. And as always, stay black, stay blessed. Happy Monday.
But I miss you in the mornings when I see the sun.
My name is Kai, and seeing as today, July 1st, is Canada Day, I thought now would be as good of a time as ever to spread awareness concerning the troubling history of this misunderstood nation. Globally, whether we warrant it or not, Canada is often viewed by others with rose-tinted glasses. From my personal experience, when you are traveling as a Canadian, if you reveal to others that you are Canadian, it is not uncommon that they will greet you with warmth and acceptance, regardless of if you deserve it or not. However, we as a country are no better than any other, including our southern neighbors, when it comes to the mistreatment of our Indigenous people, and today I would like to do my part in spreading information regarding this. Quickly, I want to preface that if you look at most of my other videos as well as my bio, you will see the Canadian flag. I want to clarify quickly that this flag to me is not flown with an appreciation of the past. My country's past is incredibly shameful to me, and in flying it with pride, my goal is to have it be a symbol for future multiculturalism and against US hegemony. I stand in absolute support with all Canadian peoples, specifically the Indigenous communities, and hope as my platform grows that I can use it to benefit them. With that being said, the Canadian mistreatment of Indigenous people should not be viewed as one incident occurring after the other, but as instead an institutionalized, shameful process that began at the very beginning. This can be illustrated by examining the early European colonial concept of terra nullius, in which European settlers deemed any land that was not occupied by Europeans as new, undiscovered land. Already, in understanding this concept, we can see how the precedent was set for European colonizers to absolutely have no respect whatsoever towards the Indigenous right to their land. This fundamental lack of respect would lead to the subsequent creation of multiple pieces of legislation, as well as notable acts that were created with the express interest of assimilating the Indigenous populations into European customs. Notably, one of these acts is the 1876 Indian Act, which could genuinely have its own miniseries created about it. One of the most cruel and unusual pieces of legislation ever created in history, this act can be seen as the root cause of the majority of the inequalities that the Indigenous peoples face today. Primarily, what it set to dictate was enforcing the Canadian government's arbitrary criteria for status among Indigenous populations. If you had your Indigenous status at this time, you were granted certain rights and protections which the Canadian government was not a fan of, and therefore, through this act, they wanted to eliminate as many people having status as possible. Through this act, if an Indigenous person wanted to obtain a degree, travel outside the country for more than 5 years, vote, or serve in the military, they had to abandon their Indigenous status. The act was also immensely patriarchal, as if a woman who was Indigenous wanted to have a child with a man who was non-Indigenous, that woman and her subsequent children would both have to abandon their status. On top of this, the act banned the Indigenous population's right to self-governance, it forced them to have to sign passes if they wanted to leave their reserves, and made it a criminal offense for any lawyer to aid Indigenous people if they wanted to sue the government. This, along with incentivization programs by the Canadian government for any Indigenous person willing to give up their status, genuinely caused the assimilation or separation of an untold amount of Indigenous Canadians. Additionally, in my current home province of Newfoundland and Labrador, early colonizers also committed a successful genocide of an entire group of Indigenous people. Here, through introduction to disease, starvation, systematic hunting, and encampments, practically every single member of the 𝑓̓ population was killed, and nobody seems to talk about it. Those 𝑓̓ who survive today, despite their great efforts, have been reduced from an overarching culture to a largely genealogical and biological one, and only truly survive through their myths and stories instead of, communities. And I haven't even touched on the residential school system yet, which I promise you one day I will make an entire video on. Here, Indigenous children as young as 6 years old were forcefully separated from their families and communities to colonialist Catholic churches. Here, their identity was stripped, their hair was cut, their language was removed, and their skin was forcefully bleached. And that goes without even mentioning the explicit torture that was done to these children at the hands of nuns. Growing up in school speeches, I have heard first-hand accounts from survivors of children being hung from baskets on the ceiling until they passed, as well as the torture of having their nails ripped from their body just for speaking their own Indigenous language. These children were systematically and institutionally tortured by the Catholic Church as well as British colonialists, and nobody in the world seems to know about it. Today, as time passes, it is not uncommon for me as a Canadian to turn on the national news and hear stories of tens upon tens of bodies being found outside of these residential schools. And we as a nation, for a moment, pretend to care, and then nothing ever changes, and things continue to get worse. The last residential school closed in 1997, by the way, meaning there are 20-year-olds today who were alive as this was going on. And on top of this, Indigenous women are more than 5 times likely to be victims of homicide, police do not respect Indigenous victims of crime, and near where I grew up there is a highway of tears in which it is a common open secret that tens upon tens of Indigenous women just go missing, and nobody ever found who did it. If these were white women, the killer would have been found decades ago. This, along with the disgusting underfunding of their reserves, as well as the hateful beliefs that my fellow Canadians hold towards the Indigenous population, only scratch the surface of what we have done wrong to these beautiful people. Someday on YouTube, I hope to platform Indigenous people's voices a little more so that this story and the people who are victims of it can finally have their voices heard on a global stage. We, as Canadians, even if we are not doing it, are standing by a government actively participating in cultural genocide, and I am tired of hearing nothing happen for decades and decades and decades. But for now, I can't do anything more than that on the scale of this TikTok, so my name is Kai, and as always, have a nice one and take care.
Caucasity leads to cracktivity, leads to crackganda, leads to caucasity. As you can see, it's a vicious cycle. Let me give you guys some examples so I can expand further on this. Example number 1. The caucasity of the whites to go and get braids and dreads spawns the crackganda of Viking braids to justify the cracktivities, which spawns even more caucasity for the whites to make videos like
We
these.
should have two loctitions. One, a retweet expert and a style.
This is misinformation, and I'm gonna tell you why.
I was denied service because of my braids.
As you can see, it's a vicious cycle. Now, these three elements support each other, which means that they do not have one fixed starting point, which leads me to example number 3, the crackganda that is veganism. Thanks to the crackganda that is veganism, it gives the whites the caucasity to lecture Native Americans about how it's immoral to hunt for their own food. The vicious cycle and the weaponization of the crackganda hurts all people of color. Here's an important thing. As you can see where I put cracktivity, I have also doodled a picture of a Klansman. The reason is cracktivity can also be replaced with clantivity. This is because the vicious cycle is not always violence, but it always promotes racism, which leads me to example number 3. The crackganda, that is the American school system, gives the whites the caucasity to do one of two things. Number 1, say slurs, free speech, all that. Number 2, racial profiling. As you can see, cracktivity can also be replaced with clantivity, because non-violent racism is still racism. Here's another important thing. Remember when I say these 3 elements support each other. So, there are some instances to where 2 elements cause another, which leads me to example number 4. The crackganda that illegal immigrants are destroying this country, and the caucasity of white people to say that cause the clantivity that is ICE. Bradley, why are you saying ICE is Klan? Because they're Klan. Klansmen are unofficial. These are official officer of the law. Doesn't matter if you put a badge on them, these crackers are still Klan. So as you can see, even when the vicious cycle is not a cycle, it's still vicious. My name is Bradley, and this has been a lecture on the crackcycle. Liberation be your thoughts, peace be your heart.
It's like an orchestra of birds. It's the coolest thing. I love joy. Do you love joy? Do you know what that means?
You know, things that you should be grateful for every day that you have right now, and even the stuff that you don't have, just be thankful that you're gonna have it. Have you ever thought of that? Paradise City, like Casa Rosas. I love this song. Yeah, so been listening to birds, so birds could be significant, which is really nice. It's really nice. Take over, huh? Like there's something going on. It's beautiful. Have you stopped and listen and pause and take a break? And spirit talks in multiple different ways. Don't put them in a box. And yeah, spirit wants to confirm to someone that narcissism, system, sadistic design as well. It's a tactic. So read your books, do your study, and listen to your intuition and take action, whatever that intuitively calls to, but only for the common good, and don't do things on your own. Unite with other communities. Thank you so much. Just don't ruin it for other people, okay? You mind your own business. You do your own thing. Yeah. You don't mind what other. Try it. Try not to give attention to you know what. Let spirit tell you intuitively, and then take action. Those things that you get rid of can be replaced with better things for you. This is not a woo-woo message or anything. It's just like facts. It's for real. Confirmation.
Guess who's buying another oil pipeline, baby? You and me. Yep, Canadians are set to pay for yet another oil pipeline, one that could drive the extinction of an at-risk killer whale population and obviously worsen the climate crisis, provided everything progresses as Prime Minister Mark Carney announced yesterday alongside a beaming Danielle Smith. Because irony is dead, extreme weather, which is exacerbated by climate change, delayed Carney's initial Wednesday flight to Alberta, where he was set to receive Smith's pipeline proposal. If that ain't Mother Nature sending a message, I don't know what is. As the two began their press conference to announce the plan for a new oil pipeline, Carney apologized for his tardiness, noting the, quote,
biblical weather last night in Ottawa,
without a hint of self-awareness. And the details he went on to unveil aren't pretty for Canadians who care about the climate crisis, many of whom are already feeling its consequences. The heat waves blanketing Ontario and Quebec, the floods drowning homes across the country, and the wildfires forcing community evacuations. That's probably why the Trudeau-era Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault sent me some less than pleased comments after the announcement last night. More on that in a minute. Anyway, here's the deal. Smith is proposing a new oil pipeline that would, if approved, snake its way down to the Roberts Bank terminal in Delta, BC, following the route of the existing Trans Mountain pipeline. And Canadians are set to pay for this project largely out of our own pockets. This is despite Carney's Memorandum of Understanding with Alberta calling for any pipeline proposal to be privately constructed and financed. See, the three partners on the project are the federally owned Trans Mountain Corp, the Alberta government's Petroleum Marketing Commission, and the sole private proponent, Pembina Pipeline Corporation. The announcement also affirmed that there would be Indigenous partners with a stake, but none are currently on board. The only private partner in all of this, Pembina, is covering 10% of the construction cost, with the option to up that to 20% once the pipeline is operational. That means Crown corporations, and therefore taxpayers, are currently left holding the bag for 90% of the cost of this project. And it's a heavy bag, too. According to Alberta's submission to the Major Projects Office, the project is estimated to cost between $35.2 billion and $43.7 billion, including contingencies. Ouch. Isn't this the same Carney that just told us a few days ago we can't afford to meet our emissions targets?
It would have been too expensive for Canadians.
When pressed on exactly how much taxpayers are going to be spending on this, Smith said the amount, quote,
remains to be negotiated.
Speaking in French, Carney also chimed in that we should think of this not as spending, but as an investment.
Pas une dépense, c'est un investissement.
He claimed this announcement would catalyze, quote, well over $200 billion in direct investments in Canada and create over 175,000 new jobs. The impacts of failing to adapt to the climate crisis, meanwhile, quote, slow Canada's economic growth in 2025 by $25 billion annually, according to the Canadian Climate Institute. And that's just one of many incurred costs. Meanwhile, economists say Canada is still not recouping the costs it paid for the initial TMX pipeline purchase, and it is unlikely to ever do so. This led Anna Johnston, a staff lawyer with West Coast Environmental Law, to ask in a statement she sent to me, quote, how much more are we expected to pay to keep oil executives happy and help Danielle Smith's political career? And the new proposed project wouldn't be completed for at least 6 to 8 years, meaning we wouldn't see any financial benefit until long after US President Donald Trump, whose shadow has loomed large over the crisis Carney continually tells us demands that we abandon our ambitious climate goals, has left office. As those years tick by, the world is moving in a different energy direction. Emilia Beliveau, who is the program manager for energy transition at Environmental Defense, said in a written statement, quote, countries that rely on oil and gas imports the countries Canada is hoping to sell to in 5 to 10 years are now rapidly accelerating their energy transitions to avoid being impacted by the political whims of petrostates and the roller coaster of global oil prices. In fact, while this project is set to complete in 2032 at the earliest, global oil demand was projected to peak 2 years before that, according to the International Energy Agency's 2024 report. And after that, demand will decline. Now, I want to acknowledge the IEA changed its tune in its 2025 report, but only after the United States, which is the IEA's largest funder, pressured the agency to change its methodology. Now, this pipeline agreement came down just hours hours after Carney announced a memorandum of understanding with BC Premier David Eby, a behemoth agreement that appeared at least in part intended to soften BC to the idea of an Alberta pipeline proposal. This multi-billion-dollar MOU with BC notably included a commitment from Ottawa to keep the North Coast oil tanker ban in place, which is very good news. Meanwhile, Eby committed that BC is, quote, not going to court to fight a pipeline project. Environmental advocates told me they were happy that the tanker ban is staying. But unlike Eby, that didn't silence their pushback on the proposal of a new oil pipeline. Trudeau's environment minister, who resigned from Carney's government as he pushed for a pipeline with Alberta, was among those sounding the alarm. In a comment he sent me over Instagram last night following the announcement, 𝓂�🆃 laid out his 4 main concerns. Quote, good news or less bad news, the southern route will mean less environmental impacts and less opposition from Indigenous nations. Bad news, after promising in the MOU that if a pipeline was to be built, it would have to be financed and operated by the private sector, we've learned that, quote, Canada and Alberta will be equal partners. It looks clear now that the clean electricity regulations will be, if not abolished, seriously weakened to allow more fossil fuel electricity generation, even if it's more polluting and expensive for ratepayers. Renewables are now cheaper than all other forms of electricity. All of this is happening as we are seeing heat waves hitting numerous corners of the globe, and that northern Quebec is seeing 4 times the amount of forest fires we would normally have for this time of year. He also followed up with, oh, and we will pay for the pipeline because those companies will only be making $60 billion in profit this year. 𝓂�🆃 was far from alone in his concerns. Environmental Defense's Béliveau warned that, quote, pipelines are not a nation-building project no matter the route. They're a divisive distraction from building the infrastructure that would actually benefit Canadians. No number of new pipelines will lower the price of gas at the pump or protect Canadians' pocketbooks, especially as climate change continues to make life more expensive. The proposed project also poses serious risks to the environment and wildlife that so many Canadians hold dear, according to Johnston. She told me, quote, yet another pipeline would saddle Vancouver, a global city renowned for its beauty, with more supertanker traffic, more industrial activity, and greater risk of spills and explosions. Quote, it could also be the nail in the coffin of the southern resident killer whale. Do you know they stay with their mothers their whole life? See, to allow for the export of the increased flow of oil and gas to go through the Vancouver area port, the government is committing $10 billion to expand the Roberts Banks export terminal, which is a project that poses major risk to the southern resident killer whale population, which is endangered. And this is despite the government's announcement of some protections for local orcas. The government signaled in a discussion paper that it hopes to give its cabinet the power to exempt major projects from the Species at Risk Act's jeopardy test. That means if cabinet says so, projects could drive an entire species to extinction. And Johnston said, quote, we know that they need that power because the Roberts Bank Terminal 2 project in Vancouver can't go ahead under the existing SARA rules because it would jeopardize the survival and recovery of southern resident killer whales. In fact, back in May, the Toronto Star's 𝓂𝆃Real reported that the government's proposal that would let companies drive species to extinction was, quote, directed at projects such as ports and pipelines that jeopardize the existence of the endangered southern resident killer whale population. The government pushed back on the reporting at the time, pointing to previous protections it put in place to protect at-risk whale populations. Protections it announced before proposing the Species at Risk Act exemptions. And in the face of that exemption, Johnston said the measures to enhance orca protections will not be enough. Quote, those protections, things like reducing fishing quotas, voluntary noise management and slowdown measures, and rules for whale watching tour boats, can't compensate for removing the critical Species at Risk Act legal protection. So, in the end, Carney and Smith's announcement yesterday could see Canadians pay for yet another oil pipeline, one that would exacerbate the climate crisis, could drive the southern resident killer whale population to extinction, and wouldn't be operational until long after Trump is out of office. Not only that, but the climate-related concessions that Carney supposedly extracted from Alberta under this deal don't appear to be materializing. Johnston pointed out that Alberta was supposed to strengthen its carbon pricing scheme, and it, quote, isn't doing that. Quote, under the new deal, its emissions will continue to grow grossly exceed those of any other province. It was supposed to agree on equivalent methane rules. Hasn't done that either. She concluded, quote, "Turns out the grand bargain the Prime Minister promised Canadians was a grand sham." This whole thing is honestly so devastating and disappointing. And if we can't save humanity, can we at least try to save the whales? Because they really deserve better. What do you think of all this? It's a national holiday today, Canada Day, and I'm working. Not because I want to, but because Mark Carney made what I would argue was one of the most consequential announcements of his time in office just yesterday. He made the announcement at a time when most people were getting ready for their day off, when rest and relaxation was creeping into the front of people's minds, and they were preparing to turn off their brains. That announcement is that Canada, under Mark Carney, is abandoning a major part of our fight against climate change. Here's how he put it.
We can't afford to restrain the growth of an important part of our energy mix, oil and gas, to meet a short-term goal. I want to be clear on this point. The changes we have made will mean that our emissions will be higher in the next few years than they were projected to be under the previous government's plan. But in my judgment, that plan was not sustainable over the long term. It would have been too expensive for Canadians who are already struggling with affordability.
That admission was nestled at the tail end of a slickly produced video from Carney's team that was published on Tuesday. The video struck me as carefully crafted to soften the blow of those words. He rehashed past announcements and repeatedly reiterated warnings about the dangerous, unprecedented times that we're facing.
We're living through a time of great disruption, the security crisis. In this global disruption, our neighborhood hasn't been this hostile since when Canada was founded amidst this chaos. The world hasn't been this unstable geopolitically since the end of the Second World War.
However, environmental advocates I reached out to saw through the spin. Anna Johnston is a staff lawyer at West Coast Environmental Law. She told me, quote, "Walking back our climate commitments and doubling down on the fossil fuels causing the climate crisis will only make life less affordable and less secure for Canadians." Tim Gray, the executive director at Environmental Defense, had similar thoughts. He told me, quote, 2026 is poised to be the hottest year in recorded history, while Europe is burning and Canada is at greater risk than most nations. The need for climate action is more urgent than ever. Any other course of action is reckless and irresponsible. See, Canada had previously committed to reducing its emissions by 40 to 45% from the 2005 level by 2030. However, the government's own report tracking the progress towards that goal admitted in December that the best Canada can achieve by 2030 is a 28% reduction. For context, that's failing to even achieve Stephen Harper's emissions reductions target. And it's our modeling's best case scenario. The day after Carney admitted that we won't meet our emissions reductions targets, a heat wave blanketed the country, prompting warnings in several provinces as Canadians gather to celebrate Canada Day. Standing on stage speaking to Canadians, Carney reminded them to hydrate.
It is time for a hydration break. It's hot. If you're watching at home, it is hot there.
Yeah, and it's just gonna get hotter. These heat waves, which kill people, are just one of the deadly consequences of climate change in Canada. We can also expect more wildfires that burn more intensely, forcing Canadians out of their homes and destroying local ecosystems. Extreme weather and powerful storms, flooding, and poor air quality are also just some of the real and devastating impacts of climate change. Still, Carney told us that the Trudeau-era goals were not sustainable over the long term.
It would have been too expensive for Canadians who are already struggling with affordability.
Carney, meanwhile, decided that we could afford to scrap a proposed hike to the capital gains inclusion rate, a tax that would have only applied to people who make more than $250,000 per year on stocks and mutual funds or property they own for investment. Currently, Half of these gains aren't taxed, and Carney made sure things stayed that way. And while Carney tells Canadians we can't afford to restrain the growth of oil and gas, which is, by the way, Canada's largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, evidence suggests that what Carney said there isn't correct. In fact, we arguably can't afford not to restrain these emissions. Johnston told me, quote, "The climate crisis is costing Canadians billions and dragging down our economy. Rising fuel prices are hurting Canadians' pocketbooks even as oil and gas companies rake in astronomical profits. Meanwhile, those same companies claim they can't afford to pay for their climate pollution and are lobbying hard for weaker regulations and more taxpayer dollars." According to the Canadian Climate Institute, the costs of climate change to our economy and society are, quote, "potentially catastrophic." Their report found that since 2010, the cost of weather-related disasters and catastrophic events are equivalent, quote, to about 5 to 6% of Canada's annual GDP growth, up from an average of 1% in previous decades. On top of that, without efforts to mitigate it, ground-level ozone, which is a major component of smog, could cause over 250,000 people per decade to be hospitalized or die prematurely towards the end of the century. And that has an annual cost of about $250 billion, according to CCI. Meanwhile, they also found that climate-induced damages slow Canada's economic growth in 2025 by $25 billion annually, which is equal to 50% of projected GDP growth in 2025. And these aren't even all the costs associated with the climate crisis. Despite this, Carney is jetting over to Alberta today, where Premier Daniel Smith is set to make an announcement on Thursday regarding a proposed oil pipeline to Canada's west coast. This tracks when you consider that, according to Carney, Canada's previous plan to beat back the deadly consequences of climate change was, quote,
too divisive for our country. In the current environment, the old plan was an open opportunity for those people who wish to pull Canada apart.
And pipeline projects aren't? Is it only division when it's Alberta that's upset? Anyway, Johnston rejected that claim. She told me, quote, "Danielle Smith has been fostering separatist sentiment for her political gain and to the rest of Canada's loss. The Prime Minister's statement is a capitulation to oil and gas executives and rewards harmful political ploys at the worst possible time. As Canadians are being evacuated from wildfires, melting glaciers are flooding communities, and people from coast to coast are bracing for another hot summer. We need to ramp up our climate efforts, not abandon them." Tim Gray had similar thoughts. Quote, "Premier Smith and foreign-controlled oil companies do not scare Canadians, nor will they successfully break up the country. We need climate and energy leadership that will take us to the future, not the past." In fact, as Carney is planning to unrestrict our oil and gas sector, the world is moving in a different direction, and Canada is starting to lag behind. A report from the energy research organization Ember found that the world is focusing its demand for new electricity on clean sources of energy, particularly solar. Canada, it found, is lagging behind on solar. And now this increased focus on new oil and gas development is taking us even further in the wrong direction. Gray told me, quote, "The definition of an unsustainable plan is one that banks on ongoing demand for a fossil fuel product that is dangerous and insecure. Countries around the world are quickly figuring this out. Canada is at extreme risk of being left behind with a product that is worth less and that fewer customers want. Unsustainable is any government plan that puts the lives and ecosystems of its citizens at risk. A plan that goes all in on oil and gas expansion does exactly that." Now, I can already hear the rebuttals to my video. It's people echoing the same language that Carney methodically used in his video. Carney repeatedly reiterated the unique moment in time that Canada is enduring, a continuation of a tactic that he's leaned on to build social license for his rollback of environmental policies. In her iconic book, author Naomi Klein detailed the shock doctrine. It's the definitive telling of how governments have used moments of massive shock, from war to disaster to political upheaval, as an opportunity to pursue pro-corporate policies the population might otherwise oppose. Klein has told the National Observer that Carney's deregulation agenda is a clear case of the playbook that she unveiled in her book. Klein told the National Observer's John Woodside in a December interview that, quote, "It's a pretty classic example of what I've called the shock doctrine. Canadians voted for Carney in a moment of shock and in a moment of fear because they did not want to be the United States and were saying very clearly we're a different country." And he appealed to that with all that elbows up stuff. Since then, Klein said, Carney has, quote, "capitulated on pretty much every front and is now, quote, completely trashing Canada's climate commitments and ramming through extractive projects." It also wasn't lost on me that Carney made this admission on one of the ultimate Friday nights of the year. He published his video the day before a national holiday, one that landed in the middle of a week this year, which means many Canadians might have planned vacations or extended weekends around it, and newsrooms are short-staffed, people's attention is distracted. That is when Carney chose to tell us Canada won't meet our climate goals. It came on the heels of a major energy announcement. It came ahead of an announcement of Canada's participation in Eurovision, and just before an upcoming pipeline announcement from Alberta. Perhaps then it's not surprising to know that Carney has acknowledged a tactic he learned from US President Donald Trump.
I've learned that the value, I don't fully subscribe to this, but I see the effectiveness. The value of the term they would use is flooding the zone.
Yeah, we can tell. What do you think of all this?
So yeah, back to after work. But also today work was very interesting. Today is the 7/7 portal, for some of you who know that. And literally a week from today, 7 days from today, which most of my channel message and everything is timeless, but is a new moon, the 14th of July 2026. So it has to be significant somehow. Something about 7 days. Today also was our first day in this exhibition here in Montreal, Quebec. And I'm also like, everything is like connecting because I'm also reading this book now. It's called Book of Symbolism. It's by Revival Wisdom. And I know that it's going to be very judgy because this guy takes most of what these elites have been doing for 100 years and like revealing to all of you how they operate, how their cult operates, how they use symbols and everything. Fear, low vibration. And I think throughout the years that I've been doing tarot reading, I cover like maybe the surface of it. But I think it gets even deeper when you do the decolonization for real and you are doing the work. Then you see how they do stuff. So I feel like a lot of you it's like it's landing, right? For some people, I don't know, I feel like this exhibition is gonna be, for some people, it's just gonna like pass through, like, I don't know what the fuck is this guy. But the fact that this guy knew, like, draw the Twin Towers before they were gonna be built. He was with a bunch of elites. He was an elite himself. He was surrounded by scientists, mathematicians. And yeah, this picture really got stuck with me because I was like, how did he know the fuck? And everything, all his symbol, like it was like this guy spoke in drawings, riddles, and the famous walking thing over and over, the repeated cycle. Like, there is definitely a message there. And yeah, yesterday, what Spirit wanted to start talking about was not just what we talked about yesterday, which is the continuation of this. I don't know how I'm mixing it with other videos and other channel message. But yeah, Spirit has asked me to slow down and connect and stuff. So I'm here to report back what I'm receiving, but everything is just not like, I'm like, okay, nothing is a coincidence. Like, this guy knew how to interpret the symbols and speak through symbols, through drawings and stuff like that. He would get inspired by other artists, of course. And also that through the whole situation where he will see his stuff being plagiarized and copyrighted and stuff, and then be kind of like turned around. But he was doing the exact same thing to other artists and other stuff. Like, so it's like, but he's the one that got the credit, right? I'm still digging into it because I was like, most of your work, it's a compilation. It's like AI, everyone's work in one image. And because he was connected with the right people, for sure he was Freemason, for sure. Went to the best university, the best thing, and got inspired. No. But he's admired and view and hear in the West, most white supremacists, Quebec, North Montreal. Oh, for sure. And we're seeing that. We're seeing the pattern. We see everything. But that's the point, is like, okay, you follow intuition. You see what's going on. You know the pattern. It's okay, so what are you going to do? What's the action? And I keep hearing, united, we are stronger. United, we are stronger. And then this guy kept lefting like quotes and stuff like that. Like, he's letting all of you out. That too, the end of this division, ooh, it's going to pass to people like. But you can tell at the end of his life, this guy somehow, somewhere grew a conscience or regret, or realized when he knew too much, right, about consciousness, higher consciousness. Because he was, for sure, he was digging into it. He got all the crystalline mathematician, whatever. And I feel like at the end, you can tell that he's like, fuck. I was the observer. I was the spectator of all these atrocities. Because all of this was happening before World War II, during World War II. And what did he do about it? Did he spoke about it? About any other atrocity that he benefited from? Was he part of a Mossad energy agent to continue propaganda? Because we live in a system that is full of propaganda, so he was part of it. Just like a lot of artists that did a lot of shit for. So that too, I'm seeing that this person at the end, it was all about Netherlands, The Hague, and putting in different forms. I saw the message. He literally, I think they don't want people to realize what he was doing at the end. And they accidentally put it in the exhibition, but I'm like, no, this is not an accident. This is them telling all of y'all that they don't give a fuck that you get it, that he left you that message. Same thing with Christ. He left you, told you, fuck the status quo. Right? They don't care. They never care. They never care about the working class. It's just collateral damage. You're just a number. You're just data. And if that doesn't get you angry and to do something about it, to value yourself, then this is what we do when you are in an abuse situation. You tolerate the abuse. We are tolerating these people doing horrible violence, impunity every day. My Telegram is constantly updated with massacres. I bet you guys didn't know that football goalkeeper from Palestine got killed like not long ago. It's on my repost too. It's on my Telegram. It's everywhere. A lot of people are like, wait, what? Yeah. What do you think they're distracting you guys so much this summer? They know. They need to distract you guys intensely. Make you not take a step back and educate yourself or self-reflect. Self-awareness is their biggest threat. It's their biggest fear. If you are self-aware, if you master your own self, and then you unite and talk to other people, and even if you're tired, a lot of you, they're expecting all of you. No, they're not gonna see. We're gonna distract them so much.
with so much fucking lies and propaganda. And a lot of you, I'm seeing that too, that you're feeling some type of way, especially those who are in the resistance, which I feel like, because I found out that this morning, I was really like, how yeah, it's like the resistance in Gaza are, I can never understand what these people have to see and think in for 3 years, watching their entire indigenous community being wiped down and ethnic cleansing, you know, and they're still there. Palestinian people are still there, but they in the West Bank, they're going home right now, especially all of you distracted with the World Cup. Gaza is suffering. Sudan, that too. I promised myself I would do a video about Sudan and the Congo as well, so.
In my last video, I said there's nothing that the billionaires love more than to see a bunch of financially illiterate people waving flags. But if I was to call the men marching down Newtown Arts Road financially illiterate, I might get punched in the face. They would see that as a classist slur. It sounds like a generic insult being thrown down at them from my university high horse. But it is not a statement to mock working class communities. It is a structural fact that needs addressing. But it's not just them. If I was to call you financially illiterate, you might unfollow. Why are we taking that personally? You never got a class in school on this. You're expected to just know about markets by osmosis? WeArePay.uk did a load of polling in 2024 and they asked people directly about their own financial literacy. 78% of Britons consider themselves financially illiterate. 71% don't know how a savings account works. Only 23% passed the basic money literacy test in 2026, down from 49% in 2024. We're getting stupider. This is not something that you need to hold as your own personal failure. This is a system trying to make you financially illiterate so that it can get away with crime. According to research done last year by the London Foundation of Banking and Finance, 40% don't feel confident managing money. And 86% said that personal finance should be on school curriculums. But it isn't. Illiterate comes from the Latin word illiterus. It just means without letters. The original meaning was unable to read or write. These are skills you have to be taught. They're not a reflection of your intelligence. Financial literacy is not something that you should have. It is a technical term that means unable to understand basic financial products, unable to interpret a contract, unable to assess risk or return. How many of you can interpret a contract? It took me a master's degree and 10 years in corporate law to understand a contract. My ex-employers in finance get paid huge money to help people assess risk or return. Most people are financially illiterate. The majority of people are financially illiterate. You would want to fucking hope so, because if people actually understood the system of capitalism that we live under and we're opting into this, then we've no hope. If we cannot address our collective financial illiteracy without somebody getting personally offended or ashamed, that's a conversation stopper. That's a structural barrier. Research on financial shame consistently finds that when people do not understand a complex financial system, they conflate their not knowing with them being stupid. They then feel humiliation, and this creates a deep internal shame, so they shut down. Shame being deployed to stop you gaining financial literacy is literally British Empire colonial technique documented. It is a technology of control. Your own shame is weaponized against you. So me, educator, has to work twice as hard to cushion complex financial understanding into safe, acceptable language that doesn't make you feel ashamed of yourself. If you want to extract wealth from a population for centuries without them rising up, you can't just use guns. You have to also use language. I speak English, I speak Irish, I speak a bit of Spanish, I speak a little bit of French, I even have a couple of words of Romanian. But I also speak fluent legalese and financialese. These are different languages. They use euphemisms and symbolisms and customs that you're expected to know in the background. The entire goal of all of this pageantry of the suits and the ties and the shareholder meetings is to make you feel stupid. If you feel too stupid to understand what you are looking at, you stop looking entirely because shame takes over. I can't read this, it's too hard, I give up. You are stepping into your own invisible cage. Well, you first need to step out of your own invisible cage and reckon with your own financial illiteracy. The corporate machine that has used this island as its own financial pump for generations also designed the school curriculum. And they spend years teaching working class kids about William of Orange, a poorly framed interpretation of a tribal war from 1690. But not a single hour goes into teaching you how to do your taxes or why you pay them or where that cash actually goes. The empire triggers people's financial shame so that you redirect your genuine systemic anger outwards onto these brown faces, marginalized communities. The empire, in its gold-lined castle, wants you to look at a destitute family in a hostel and blame them for your poverty. While the flag wavers are too busy policing their own communities for free, the global boardrooms are operating with absolute financial efficiency and no oversight. Religious education, physical education, and learning for work are compulsory in our schools. Financial literacy has to come from somewhere. It is not compulsory at any level in any school. You are getting it from a TikTok. This channel was my own answer to the question, what can I do? And I'm doing it for you too. What you can do today could be as simple as sharing these videos with someone. I have a fully indexed archive of all of my videos on my website. I have 89 different playlists on my YouTube channel covering everything from the East India Trading Company to how a trust works, the legal structure. I have a whole playlist dedicated just to the North, and in that I explain everything from the City of London's original colonising of Derry to last year's Ballymena riots. I even corrected the original story of King Billy who saved us by providing who financed him. I try to keep my videos simple and I try to make simplified versions of things, but I am also holding the entire investigative thread and I'm trying to keep it usable in those legal and political environments for other journalists. Somebody commented on my video this morning that it was good but probably lost on the people who need it. So there is a job opening here for as many people who possibly can to keep going with it. Learn, educate yourself, work on your financial literacy, and then help other people understand. I am also easy to smear. I'm one personality. So within that far-right group, they can dismiss the idea of even learning from me because they think I'm too leftist or whatever. It's that simple. I've already called them illiterate, so they won't engage with me. But they might engage with a local man who sounds like them. What you can do depends on you, depends on what your skills are, where you're already positioned and what capacity you have. Sharing my videos gets them in front of more people and brings more people into awareness. But making your own is even better. I encourage people to do this all the time, and I put resources into my Discord and onto Substack to try and help you with that. My rule about it is my face has a fee, but the information that I share is free, so please use it. Please don't steal my face without credit, but like, you're not plagiarizing me if you report on this through my frame. Please do that. Actually seen some wonderful journalists, Dutch girl in Albania, take my original research and go so much further with it last week, and I think it's amazing. That's exactly what I would love. I would love to see people in the North pick up this frame and put it into more videos and spam the algorithm back, because you're fighting with a billionaire who owns his own algorithm and spams it constantly with dangerous rhetoric. That's comms, that's one side of it, and we really need to mobilize an army of propagandists to drive comms, to drive educational materials, and to get people understanding how the world really works. The second part of it depends on what's around you, what you're already tapped into. For example, I don't have kids, so I don't have access to any school boards. But I think it's really important that the education system is overhauled. So if you are a parent and you are not hammering the school board once a month on the email, that's something you could be doing. Fuck it, force your way in, take my financial literacy slides and just start teaching kids in the playground. Make it awkward and uncomfortable for these institutions. One massive lever that I would expect any regular follower of this channel to have already pulled, and if you haven't, do it now, is your pension. Where is it invested? Put pressure on.
A digital archive documenting Israel's war crimes and genocide in Gaza has officially been launched. And I can't show the videos here because they are far too graphic, but there are tens of thousands of pieces of video evidence of Israeli war crimes in Gaza. ArchiveGenocide.com went live this week with nearly 65,000 videos, 18,000 photos, all with geolocation data and victim information to showcase Israel's war crimes in Gaza, all in one place that is easily accessible for journalists, content creators, or people just looking to gain information about the genocide in Gaza. This is a searchable database of Gaza genocide documentation with a source index spanning more than 300 journalists. It features a live map and minute-to-minute updated victim list, making this the most comprehensive archive of the Zionist genocide. The platform was built by a collective under the name Israel Exposed. This is a network of grassroots activists. They built the platform to ensure a permanent preservation of Israel's war crimes and genocide in Gaza, despite Israel's frequent telecommunication blackouts, targeting and murdering of journalists and media workers. This website, this documentation, allows for long-term legal accountability. It provides the public infrastructure for prosecution of Israel's war crimes. Israel has tried so hard to bury the evidence by killing the journalists in Gaza who would document these atrocities. But they can't bury it anymore. We all have access to this. They can no longer change the narrative as we all have access to a comprehensive evidentiary dossier. If you ever get gaslit into doubting the genocide in Gaza, go to this website, Archive Genocide, and see for yourself. Remember, Israel is trying to fight a war front in your mind via false information, and they're losing because of tools like this.
I promised you I wouldn't sugarcoat tough messages.
And I promise you, I'm not going to tell you that Mark Carney is a cult leader, because that's overused, dramatic, and inflammatory. He's too normal for that. But I did journalism on cults and cult leaders for a long time, and what I can tell you is this. A cult leader has to be a master of a double life, and the best ones entrance followers by living both lives in the open, as though they are coherent. And that can be magnetic because it's baffling. And I think this is helpful to think about when thinking about Carney. The leader simultaneously has to present comforting, hopeful, and prophetic content that soothes and inspires followers while maintaining a ruthless focus on hoarding wealth and social control and growing an elite power network. Now, this is more than the banal duplicity of the common politician, Clinton, Weiner, Cuomo. The real leader is living two lives out in the open, merging the face of compassion with the face of death in a way that scrambles perception with a primal spell. For Carney, it means saying Pope Francis inspired him to imagine a green economy while running financial schemes that ruin the planet. It's going to Pride Parade one day, and then Canada's largest arms convention the same week. It's talking about sovereignty while smashing First Nations relations and merging the country's surveillance state with the DHS. It's celebrating Canada Day by announcing how we're going to have to increase carbon emissions to be who we are as a nation. There was a book a while back called The Cult of Trump, and I think that framework is recognizable, if shrill. But Carney is head and shoulders more sophisticated because his contradictions do not seem to tear him apart. He will not undersleep or overpost or eat himself to death. Carney will not flame out in chaos. And if somehow he loses the power he's now locking up, he'll just go back to global finance without missing a step. Most importantly, devotion to Carney and the fictional country he embodies feels rational, wholesome even. No red hats, no speaking in tongues, just a smiling flow of capital. Canadian leadership will become more authoritarian and corporate controlled as Trump implodes, but it will last longer, and the relationship between capitalism and fascism will become clearer. Fascism only fully arrives when capitalism is losing control, and in Canada, it has not lost control. We typically say that capitalism must destroy itself through contradiction, but Carney says, hold my beer. Watch me smirk and nod my way through reading these death sentence bills on democracy, the rights to protest and strike, and the climate, all while I make people feel like they're listening to their dad. It's not hard for people outside of Trump's diehard fandom to be totally disgusted by him. But with Carney, more people will have to be disillusioned at a level that challenges their positive liberal self-regard and their instinct to trust these very normal monsters and their hope that the violence will never be directed at them.
And I actually did. I did, and it's called The Education That You're Not Gonna Find Anywhere. Is gonna be in my YouTube channel. It's there. But for the TikTok here, because I know that this information is going to be heavily suppressed, and so yeah, it's programming condition. It's designed for a lot of you not to be educated. So us sharing what we know is an act of resistance. Is an act of love. It's an act of empathy. It's an act of like, hey, I know that you didn't know this. It's not an attack. And it's not, for some, yes, you need to be held accountable. We need to build that and demand justice. And it's not just demanding, not just the justice, it's reparation, it's land back. And a lot of you feel they're really, really trying. They're desperate at this point because they know that the moment that you really realize that you have the power and that you're able to together overcome them and make sure that they pay for their crimes. And there's ways. There is. It's just today the universe speaking through this exhibition and me reading this thing and then everybody else who I show you in my channels, the educators, the content creators, everyone who is a real, real conscience here. They have empathy and, 3, look at this. 144 just happened. Hi, babies. 3. Been learning about that. Everything comes in 3. Mind, body, and spirit. I think. I feel. I act. That's for someone. So all those things that I'm kind of putting out here when we do the shadow work and the work here, the colonization and all of that. And yes, when I'm talking about this, I am literally, like I told you, whenever I can, on a daily basis. Hi, Kanawagi. Hi, beautiful people. I want to acknowledge this beautiful land, that it does, it belongs to Indigenous people here. And that's what we're going to do. But that, not just saying it, is also contributing financially, going to places to support Indigenous people, go to places where Black community spaces, go help, people who are oppressed and continue helping them, not just one time, every day. Also, I have some families in my link tree. If you're able to donate, know also that I'm giving readings. So if you donate, take a screenshot, send it to me by email. I will give you a reading if you want. You can donate as well. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for all the good juju that you sent my way. I will send it back to you 100 times fold. And same thing for the enemies around here. Yeah, so that too, it's like they think that they feel some type of way, like, oh, I'm gonna get away with this, I'm gonna do this. Oh, I just got bitten by a mosquito. Vampire energy, there's a lot of those. Anyways, Spirit wants to talk about racism, basically. because one of the things that these elites are really heavily taking advantage, and this is why the rise of these white nationalists and white supremacists is on the rise, while also all of us were distracted with, like, you know, the dying of the anti-Semitism word, which is also rising for the real Jews who are anti-Zionist. Okay, so a lot of you, when you give ISRAHELL that distraction, remember that when they're losing as well, one of the tactics the elite billionaires will do is they will unleash. You've seen this Tulsa massacre. You've seen this in history already, right? They will unleash these demonic energies, white supremacists with their masks and stuff like that. You saw the picture. One of you saw it. I know it's circling around. And it's not just in the States, it's happening here too. So these people feel more bolded to do vile and evil things to people of color. So the more we tolerate Carney or the Jezebel Smith, which I want to apologize for a lot of you who, there was a content creator, I didn't know that she was, like, I saw, like, the 3 hours later,
Canada,
she was,
look closely
like,
at your
taking pictures
bills.
with
Your mortgage statement
that
is an
fucking bitch
absolute
Smith
trap.
in Alberta.
Local
I'm
business.
like, ew. Like, she was given the right points, this girl. She was given the right content. She was exposing Carney, and you think she's on your side, you know? You were, oh my God, you know? Because she's literally exposing Carney because he's a fucking asshole. So she was given the right points. She wrote the right article in Substack and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, so I saw people that when I reposted her thing in Substack and stuff, I didn't know. Hey, I didn't know she was a fucking Jezebel demonic motherfucking bitch. Pretending. Anyways, learn my lesson. I think I reposted it in the TikTok. You can see. I was like, oh, I thought I unfollow her and everything because I was like, wait, literally 3 hours after she exposed Carney and she was talking about his motive about, you know, the climate change and the pipelines and stuff, and I was like, oh, she's doing the right thing, great. Literally, I look at the next picture, she's in the Stampede or something like that in Alberta with this fucking bitch who signed the fucking pipeline too with Carney. She wasn't with Carney, but she was taking pictures like as if they're friends and stuff like that with the fucking Smith bitch. I was like, ew, gross. So yeah, I don't follow her and do all that. I even removed the stack because I was like, she's giving the right points. She's on the right track, but she's using it. She's using our movement. She's using the right information, giving it back to us, but still colluding with the enemy. Still colluding with the fucking demonic motherfucking shit. How, yeah. And when you see that, make sure that you retract. And yeah, so I lost my one subscriber and Substack. I was like, I'm so sorry. It's okay. I mean, I just started and people don't really know me. And I expect it. Everybody's going to assume some type of way. But take a step back. This is why. I was like, wait, why is going on? And I felt that energy. Like, people were like, how dare you support that girl? I'm like, wait, I don't know. And then I looked back more. I went to her actual TikTok thing and I saw why people were upset. I'm like, oh, fuck, yeah, I would be upset too. So I didn't know, okay? And I hope I didn't, offended anyone, but I was even offended. I was like, how dare you throw back our data, our facts and shit that we already know and putting it out there because she's white. So I know that the algorithm is going to prefer her. So I was like, great, you're giving the right information. So let's help you out too. No. This is why people like that, when they pretend that they're in with you, fucking bootlickers. And then they were bold, like say the same thing that you say or other content creators say or other people. And then once they get to the top, these other people, they just switch up on you and stuff like that. So that I saw it before it happened, before the switch. Like she literally taking pictures with this fucking bitch. So she supports that bitch, but she's trying to like defamation of character with Carney, but not really. Because they're the same coin, they're the same thing. So, comes from rich ass family who's connected to the Smith. So yeah, anyways, I don't want to talk about it, but I just wanted to say sorry for all of you. Like, a lot of you'll know who this is because I don't want to. Like Spirit was like, no, don't even mention their name. That was just a lesson. Don't do it again.
White supremacists have started creating edits in order to lure young white people into white supremacy. And when I say edits, I mean edits. Like, it's a racist caricature of a black person. That's how the video starts. And then it ends up with American eagles and screeching and showing beautiful or attractive white people. Here is an example of a video like that. As you can see, the point of this video is to demonize black people or brown people and to literally say white people are the best. It's the subtext of reading between the lines, and this type of video is getting pushed out like crazy. Literally, just look how many likes there are. I had so many of my followers tag me in this video saying, hey, like, you should make a video about this. And so if you are a parent and you have white children, you really, really need to make sure that they are not consuming this type of content. This is the way that white supremacists are fully indoctrinating young kids. White parents already teach their kids racism for the most part, but to see it explicit and glorified, extremely concerning, especially because social media is not going to prevent these videos from being shown. They enjoy pushing this content out. So please be mindful of what you're consuming, and if you see any racist edits like this, immediately do not watch them and report them.
You ever think about how racism didn't just come from ignorance? It came from science, but not real science. The kind made in European labs to try to prove that we were less than. They didn't just enslave people, they studied them, measured them, dissected them, and then called it discovery. They tried to make racism look intelligent. In the 1800s, Europe and the Americas were conquering half the world, calling it civilization while committing genocide. But how do you justify that and still pretend to be enlightened? You invent biology that backs it up. They called it scientific racism, phrenology, craniometry, eugenics. White men in lab coats measuring skulls, ranking skin tones, pretending they'd found proof that Africans were less evolved. Also, they could keep exploiting people without guilt. They put numbers on oppression and then had the nerve to call it progress. They didn't find evidence, they created it. Samuel Morton in Philadelphia filled entire rooms with human skulls taken from African graves, indigenous burial sites, and enslaved people. He measured brain size to prove that Europeans were smarter. And when the numbers didn't match his theory, he just rewrote them. Across the ocean, George Cuvier dissected Sarah Bartman, a South African woman paraded across Europe as the Hottentot Venus. After she died, they preserved her body in jars and displayed it in a Paris museum for more than a century. They called it science. It was desecration. These weren't fringe men with weird ideas. These were respected scholars, professors, museum curators, even government advisors. They built the lie that made slavery, colonization, and white supremacy sound logical. What a reach. Bunch of bitches. They wanted proof that they were at the top of the hierarchy, so they built the hierarchy themselves. Those fake findings didn't stay in labs. They ended up in textbooks, classrooms, and policy. They justified segregation, sterilization, colonization, and even genocide. It's what the US used to ban immigrants from undesirable races. It's what Europe used to turn entire continents into forced labor camps. And when people fought back, they just argued. The science says you're inferior. How dare you? That's how deep it went. Y'all, the lie became law. And here's the part that should make you sick. Even after those theories were debunked, their logic lived on. That same ideology shaped how IQ tests were written. It influenced who got educated, who got hired, who got housed, who got studied, and who got saved. So yeah, trust science, but never forget who it used to serve. Because before it cured disease, it built racism.
Cost of living is one of the most subtly evil phrases to ever enter our lexicon. The cost of living. The phrase is so normalized we don't even hear how dystopian it sounds anymore. It implies by default in our current system, nobody inherently deserves to live. You can quite literally be priced out of life. Even the question, how do you earn a living, implies that a living is something you have to earn. Have to earn the right to exist? Says fucking who? What do you mean those at the top? The ones benefiting from the system? The ones that set up the system? The ones that hoard all their wealth while the rest of us fight for scraps just to survive? Who decided that unless you generate generate a profit for shareholders and your boss, you don't deserve housing, food, or healthcare. That's what the system is saying. If you don't increase shareholder value, you die. And if you fall behind, that's your own personal failure, instead of a very predictable outcome from a system that's designed to keep people stressed, exhausted, and broke. People hear that and go, well, that's life. No, it's not. This is a system that we created. Money isn't naturally occurring like oxygen or gravity. We invented money. It's all fake. Pieces of paper or a number on a screen. It's not real. Money only has value because we say it does. We all collectively decided tomorrow that money is worthless. It would just become worthless immediately. I don't think people fully grasp this concept. We all as a collective are just agreeing that a piece of paper with the number 100 on it actually is valuable. It's all pretend. But it has real world impacts. People die over this shit. People freeze to death while cities have empty homes. People starve to death while supermarkets throw away excess food. People work 60 hours a week and still can't afford to live. Then we're told there's not enough money for healthcare, housing, education, raising wages, while they launch themselves into space for fun. Fucking coming for you, Katy Perry. We don't need to live like this. This isn't a system that's fixed in place. Set up by design to be this cruel. It's intentional. Capitalism only works when there's a threat of homelessness, when there's a threat of death. People can't organize a revolution when they're too tired and hungry from working 60 hours a week. If people weren't afraid of losing everything, they wouldn't tolerate being exploited. They literally don't have the energy to question the system that's taking advantage of them. Once again, this is by design. Before anyone tries to twist my words, I'm not saying everyone should just magically get everything for free. It's incomprehensible to me that in the richest era in human history, people have to earn the right to live. Nobody should ever have to justify their existence through productivity. We shouldn't even be discussing the cost of living. Human beings should just be allowed to live. I feel like I'm going insane. How is this not the baseline standard of our society? Under capitalism, everything has to have a cost because someone needs to make a profit. That is not human nature.
Okay, so now in these spaces of, doing the anti-racism work, anti-Zionist work, which we're constantly doing over here. I just read energy now intensely so that I can guide my people in the right situations. But it's not just guiding in the energy spiritually, there's also, this is why it's my responsibility to see these patterns, see as someone who's in this type of work, which most people are not educated about, but I'm here to do that because you have to do it's beautifully spiritually to be political savvy, to be media literacy, to be someone who can discern propaganda, especially from the US imperialists and from Canada, from anywhere on the West. It's our duty. It's our duty as a healer, if you're an activist, if you're a whatever politician. Like now you have genocide archives. I was looking into it. I was like, damn. Most of those videos, these are the ones that I sent to the ICCJ and evidence for the past 3 years as well. A lot of us writers and the real people who archive also this stuff, half of the archives and the genocide there. You can send this to your politicians, by the way. A lot of you can write a letter to the MP and talk about how Dr. Musafia needs to be released, and then you can send them the genocide archive and you can say, hey, right? That's what we should be doing. He literally said it, they send me here to die. This feels like, that story, de Monte Cristo. The story of Monte Cristo, the book. He also was an elite and all that, but they put him in prison in jail. He was innocent, and how they beat him and torture him every time. I don't want to get off topic, but I want to remind you that this has happened before. This has happened to other people, and this is just not the only doctor. This is the only doctor that literally he's deteriorating. The torture is we need to do something about that, and in the end it's arms embargo now. Ceasefire. That's minimum. That's bare minimum now. Yeah, 3 years later, that is bare minimum now, because now we know they use a ceasefire just to continue going. It's just to recuperate. It's just to recharge. It's to continue delaying. It's just to continue spreading propaganda. Meanwhile, they're trying to restore the resistance, any possible way, any form. Some of them are be able to stand strong, but others no. It has to be the end of this parasitic energy that should not exist. That we know it should not exist. Right? Now, when we talk about, and this is something that is constantly educating ourselves, please read some books. I have some in the bookshop. Okay. Another one that I was really good to. I was looking in Substack. This guy put an entire book list of what to read, and most of the half of them I've read already, and then some of them I'm like, oh my god, I'm so excited to read this. So go check him out. Go subscribe. Okay, and go read this article. Yeah. I restack it. So if you don't feel like, just go to my restacks and it's there. Learn to also have fun with knowing the right information, finding the information, finding the truth. Our enemy, our common enemy, wants you to be a dumbass, does not want you to be educated. Think about that. Why do they need you, that entire human population, the working class, the people that pay taxes, that these motherfuckers take from you? And it's not just your finances. I explained that for the past 10 years in this channel. It's not just your money. It's everything. Your energy, your aura, your youth, your joy, your land, your mother. You're gonna let it? You're gonna continue letting it? And I'm not judging the people in the resistance, because especially the people from Gaza, like Spirit keeps saying, like, speak to them from the heart. And it's so hard for me because I end up like constantly crying of how much the world has betrayed these people. Genocide Archive is literally journalists, the 200 and almost 300 that they were killed, exposing the truth to you so that this stops the genocide, right? It's still going. You look at my Telegram, press on the pin, and those are in the past, but it's still going. There's still updates. There's still massacres. There's still genocide. And it's not just in Palestine, Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, some of it's come up too. Yemen, Iran. It's designed that we don't speak the same language as well when it comes to resisting this diabolical cult system. People who run, because it is a cult. In this article today, I was seeing the symbols, and at the end, he was just like, yeah, there's ways of how to end this. I saw the hate everywhere at the end. And it felt like, it was like, you remove their power, their status, you give back to, I feel like this is a tormented elite from the past still stuck in hellfire, like and they're trying to like keep it alive, the symbols and stuff like that. Like his whole exhibition, it felt like really culty, like it felt like harnessing power, but me, they cannot do that anymore, so I am just the absorber. And I feel this energy of this person's like not person's soul, or I don't know, it's just, this is someone, a trapped soul that can never, and he had 3 sons or 3 kids or something like that. And I feel like this is an energy, it's like, I don't want my kids to make the same mistake as me. Yeah, they put me in museums and blah blah blah, but this guy never got any of his credit or anything whatsoever of the commission until he was like 70. So you have people profiting from this artist after he's dead, harnessing his pictures and energy. Meanwhile, the whole time in all his art and picture and everything, he was just trying to let us know how to use symbolism and all these elite symbols and cults and shit like they're doing to keep people trapped, to keep people asleep, to keep people uneducated. So right now, what they thought by putting this exhibition, hi. So am I right? Yeah. Look, spirit speaking. I'm telling you, I feel like this is a trap, elite. Not that I give a fuck about these assholes, but this is one who has so much regret and has overcome all kinds of hellfire. So they want their soul or their kids not to suffer what they have suffered for. When did he die? 1970 something? So it's been, well, in hell, the years and time is different. It's actually more. So this one's begging for mercy. Because that's what they're going to be. All billionaires, they're going to be begging for mercy. The same way that they've watched the oppressed. And by the way, these people are sick. I also saw the satanism energy that this artist was portraying. These are people that do not care. They don't have feelings. This is why they get their inner demons get irritated by people who are kind, who care, who give a shit. This is who we're dealing. This is our politicians, the corporation, people who, yeah. And then they demonize us and dehumanize us when we expose them.
This could potentially overtake us here. This is getting a little scary.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Okay. Yeah, this is...
Okay, y'all need to hurry up here. Like, seriously, we're encased in flames now.
2 days ago, Mark Carney put out this 17-minute long video that can be summarized in 3 words. Fuck the environment.
The changes we have made will mean that our emissions will be higher in the next few years than they were projected to be.
To be clear, we've been knowing that Mark Carney is not a climate guy. While those who are drinking the Kool-Aid are pretzeling themselves to spin this message, really anybody with even a basic understanding of the climate crisis knows that he's fucking us over. So instead of just talking about why this is so terrible, I want to unpack one part of his messaging that I think is really important because it mirrors exactly the messaging that he's using to sell us something else. The DSRB. Stick with me here.
We can't afford to restrain the growth of an important part of our energy mix, oil and gas, to meet a short-term goal.
What Carney is essentially saying there is that he cannot allow his good friend billionaires who are in oil and gas to take a pay cut because of a pesky little thing called the climate crisis. So now let's compare that language to the language that's being used to justify the Defense, Security, and Resilience Bank. The DSRB is going to be a financial institution that many banks have already signed on to joining that is going to be designed to literally funnel money directly into arms manufacturers. To be so clear, this is going to have no benefit to the average Canadian. In fact, they're using public money to fund this. And listen to how they're talking about it. In the official brief on this bank, they say the following. The public and many European nations in Canada prioritize spending on healthcare, education, and public infrastructure over defense. This report posits that expecting a drastic shift in these domestic spending priorities remains unlikely. Instead, a viable solution to this challenge is proposed through the establishment of a defense, security, and resilience multilateral lending institution, what this report is calling the Defense, Security, and Resilience Bank. What this is saying is that governments do not want a pesky little thing like having to pay for public programming, healthcare, and education to get in the way of their profit. We have the exact same admission that the well-being of the public does not matter to Carney and that he would always prioritize billionaire profit over the well-being of the average Canadian. He is actively finding ways to benefit big business, big industry, whether that be the oil and gas industry or the weapons manufacturing industry. And he is playing right in our faces, literally admitting what he's doing. And we just have to be able to see through it. We have to be able to strip down the 17 minutes of bullshit and focus on the 1 minute where he really tells us what is going on.
We need to have a very uncomfortable conversation about Israel outside of even just the context of conflict and genocide. And that is this. Over the week, I'm sure that you have probably heard that a mining billionaire, mining is going to be relevant in a moment, has suggested that Australia give a whole bunch of free land to Israel, import Israelis to settle there, and also import their defense, surveillance, and mining technology. They refer to this as like an expertise that they are bringing in with these people. And we need to go back to the Bondi Beach shooting, because there is an article that I've tried to read on here twice that I could not. It got taken down, and it is called "We Do Not Mourn Fascists," and it was written by an Australian man. It is up on Substack, and I will put it here. And basically it talks about the way that this specific Chabad house and rabbi has basically been tormenting people in Australia, both in the sense that they are part of organizations that are tracking anti-Semitism, which will be relevant also in a second, but also that rabbi was talking about how he was going to use the Chabad house to try to recruit Australians to Mossad, and that weeks prior to his passing, he was in Israel with the thumbs up signing a missile to go into Gaza. There's lots of pictures, lots of information, and it talks about the way that they're behind basically this big push to deport immigrants throughout Australia. Of course, they're the same ones doing it here in the United States. We all know who wrote our border policy, and that they are wanting a lot of special legislation passed for them, including things like gun ownership that would never be given to any other group, while also kind of perpetuating some really nasty ideas towards the Muslim community and other immigrants. So there's kind of this thing where, like, so they want to settle here and import their technology and mining here, but they also are asking and demanding Australia for all of these extra favors. So when it comes to tracking the anti-Semitism in Australia, something I found very interesting is that the way I came across this article was it was on one of those pages that none of us can escape on Facebook, where it's Stop Anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is on the rise, but I didn't think that this was a true group trying to stop anti-Semitism, because it was so, like, poor me, and many of the stories were conveyed completely incorrectly. So I almost wondered if it was like reverse propaganda. So the way that they described this story when they shared it is that an Australian man was celebrating the death of a 10-year-old Jewish girl in the Bondi Beach shooting. That is nowhere in the article. That is not what it is about. He admits that the child was a victim, but he also says that they do these things and create a very hostile environment, and then do these big public displays of, you know, religion, and it'll be on the beach or it will be without a permit, and it just creates a lot of conflict. And so he was just adding nuance to who the rabbi was that died, some of the horrific things that he had said and did throughout his lifetime. But he also talks about how it wasn't fair the way that they start counting anti-Semitism, but they don't count these other crimes. So for example, and one thing that I looked up and read was that there was this whole slew of, like, these businesses being vandalized and ransacked all throughout Australia. And it kind of looks like two strip malls across each other, like, that go on for a long time, like a downtown area. And this went on for months, and they start counting all of the Jewish-owned businesses as being anti-Semitic, and they say now it's up 50%, whatever. And then it turns out that the police came out and said, we don't believe that this string of events was anti-Semitic, because it happened to dozens and dozens of businesses over like 3 months. 2 happened to like be Jewish type thing. But then for a long time, there were all of these bomb threats being called to schools and Jewish centers all throughout Australia, saying that they were going to bomb them, shoot them, whatever, and it became like this huge area of contention throughout Australia. Well, it turns out the person that did that was Jewish, and they were from Israel. They ended up getting extradited to Israel, where they are tried for all of these fake threats. So again, it wasn't anti-Semitism, it was just a lunatic doing something really awful. And when I say they are doing this to every country, oh boy do I mean it, because the very next article that this group shared, because I was trying to figure out who they are, what they're about, was about how, I want to say it was Bangladesh, that they said after 20 years of this couple running a Chabad house, that they were randomly kicked out due to fears of anti-Semitism. Well, that ended up also not being true. They ran the story and cried poor me, but then the owner had come out and said, no, I'm owed like over $100,000 in back rent. Like, I can't keep renting to you for free. At which point the couple kind of took their statements back, but it's still being shared in that context. We all know what's going on in the Philippines, because they too have a Chabad house, and what they will do with these, they typically prefer coastal areas, nice places they could take over. So there, they are sending IDF soldiers to, you know, decompress after serving, and they're being lewd, they're being obnoxious, they're referring to the staff in the Philippines as slaves, they are wearing what is not appropriate, they are not following you know, they have like curfews and stuff there, and lots of complaints, but also that they are establishing this again on a beach, and it threatens wildlife and opens up this entire community to a flood. This is also happening in Turks and Caicos with Zev Baumgarten, who we know owned the hotels in Aurora, Colorado, where he alleged that Venezuelan gangs were taking over. What is horrific about the statements in Australia, though, is that the exact words verbatim are happening right here in the United States in Ohio. Ohio legislation is basically verbatim. It talks about bringing in Israeli settlers and using them for their expertise in defense contracting, technology, surveillance. And they're using the economic development funds. The person spearheading this, of course, is a former IDF soldier who left after October 2023. And no matter how much public pushback there is, these politicians are just moving forward with it. And there's a completely separate reason, because this is where it gets really scary, that a lot of politicians won't push back on these things for Israel, and it isn't just because they're being paid, but because, again, they are creating complete states where your entire economy is now based on surveillance, mining, and tech. Number one. Number two, they're using state investment funds. That was part of the Ohio bill, and I first broke the story here in South Dakota. Don't know what a state investment fund is. The state investment fund for every state holds all of their assets. That includes pensions for anybody that works for the state. So teacher, healthcare worker, if you work for the state, your pension fund is through them. You have no choice as to how those funds are invested. But we do know that the Israel lobby has very heavily lobbied to make sure that, you know, these state investment funds cannot invest with Iran as part of sanctions, and that they have to do so much with Israel. And they're writing legislation basically that, oh, well, the dividends on, you know, Israeli gains should go to this and be its own fund, like in Ohio. But what they're doing is they're taking the state investment funds in many states. I interviewed a whistleblower from the South Dakota State Investment Fund who noticed some very odd positions and ended up being terminated, and stated that, you know, there was definitely something going on with Israel. Well, after that happened, they increased their GeoGroup positions is one example, 484%. So what this means is, even if we lobby and say, hey, GeoGroup, you do need to pay the people you're detaining more than $1 a day for their labor, or if we end mass incarceration, or we finally end our relationship with Israel and we become a less war-focused country, it will mean the economic demise of all Americans, okay? Especially if you've ever worked for the state and have a pension fund. And this was further corroborated by the fact that when somebody said, well, who's paying for these data centers, et cetera, Larry Fink said, the state investment fund. That was about a month after my story had broken all over the world. But the thing is that even if you only looked at Ohio and Australia, how much mining and surveillance and tech they want to do, it's very curious how there will be any fucking earth or rare minerals left. But it just shows that perpetual war is the only way they see going forward, which is reaffirmed by the fact that we know that they view this as an end times thing. And the bigger takeaway from this is any pushback from the United States, right? It turns Israel into enemy number one. And like I said, they have Chabad houses in every state. You go look up how much money the Chabad houses got, for example, in ProPublica. The $30 billion that we've given Israel is a drop in the bucket compared to all of the different channels of getting funding to them. But what's even more alarming isn't the fact that we all have to invest to survive economically or have retirement, and that will all collapse, or that we would need war to keep our economy going because that's all we are investing in. But what makes it worse is what we are investing in. The AI, the surveillance, the mass incarceration are all things that also jeopardize you economically, whether it be to tickets and fees, but more importantly, AI replacing your job, or you being incarcerated for protesting something that they didn't agree with. I can say confidently from these interviews and reading these bills is that the reason there is so much pushback against mosques, because you could say you don't want a mosque in a community like they're doing in Texas, say the most Islamophobic thing, and that mosque doesn't get built. You couldn't do that with a Chabad house or anything Jewish, or you'll be accused of being anti-Semitic. The reason that they aren't allowing mosques is because they believe that they're going to operate the way these Chabad houses have in certain communities. The reason that they keep telling you that there are sleeper cells from Iran, wherever in the United States, and that they're just going to take over the country at any moment in time, is because that is their plan. Every accusation is a confession.
So yeah, learn to see the pattern, learn to see and ground yourself, take a step back. I think that's what it is. My videos are getting longer for some reason. It's because Spirit is asking a lot of you to take a step back, process, pause my videos, process what you just saw, what the content creator just showed you. Pause, go for a walk, go read a book. I want you to slow down. That's what I'm trying to say. But at the same time, take action fast in other ways. Strategize. Get in communities. Protect each other. Protect Black, Indigenous people. I'm telling you. The energy where Spirit is giving you a heads up is this white nationalists and stuff like that. Like a lot of people are like, oh, but they look harmless. So they're just going somewhere and they're just walking around with a little mask covering their faces. Like, oh yeah? That's what they want you to believe. They want everyone to forget what these disgusting fuckers did in the past to most of the people past life who are back here taking a stand. So a lot of you don't tolerate racism. That's what Spirit is trying to say. That's what we learn in books. That's what they're trying to erase books of Black authors and stuff like that, and trying to erase it. So this is why a lot of us go read those books that elite and governments don't want you to read, don't want you to be educated about. Continue fighting data centers. Spirit keeps saying that, because once we reach that point that we cannot return, and a lot of you are like, oh no, but I don't want to induce violence. Okay, we'll start doing the stuff non-violent that you can now. We are 3 years too late. Yes, we have not just, we are different fronts. We're in different fronts, different ways of how to work. Some are in education, some are in the protest, some are feeding people, some are helping homeless people, some are helping someone who's DODing and stuff like that. Someone's educating children, someone is decolonizing, like, you know what I'm saying? It has to be done in every front, and yes, at the same time, if you can. Just like they do propaganda in your faces and steal in your faces and lie in your faces and betray a lot of you in your faces, you have to do the same on the other side, the opposite. You know, light and dark, sun and moon, consciousness, unconscious. Just know that the colonizers and motherfucking parasite leech want you to stay in the unconscious. Learn how they keep you in the unconscious so that you can play it better than them. Higher consciousness, Christ consciousness, all of these are consciousness that we all have access to. Especially when you tap in, especially when you have good heart, good intuition, you have good intentions, you don't have malice. Hello. Oh my goodness, 3 again. See? Look, you don't believe in magic? How? You live in it. Look at this. Hello. Now, the other question that I'm asking all of you. Yeah, let's ask this question, shall we? And I think I asked it in another video, but I'm going to ask it again. What do you have against joy? Any joy, any type of joy. And if you're not looking for joy, why? Joy and love is a form of resistance. Joy by sitting with yourself and spirit. Joy by touching a tree and talking to a tree. What's wrong with that? Joy by using your imagination and imagining a future where we don't have capitalism, politicians, or war, or genocide. Do you know how joyful I get when I think of that? You know how joyful I get when I see in my dreams all these disgusting parasite pedophiles in fucking prison or the guillotine? Oh, but you're inducing violence. For what? These people who have killed, murdered a lot of people that I have evidence already and facts. And I'm like, I ask my spirit, my guide, my divine, like, divine, what else? We have everything we need. We want justice. We want these motherfuckers being held accountable. But how can we hold accountable psychopaths? They investigate themselves. And now they're creating laws and changing laws. Watch what they're doing. Check your representative. What are they up to? What laws are they changing? Why are they so focused so much in pipelines? Why? They literally just changed a law recent where they can do stuff. They can do stuff to environment and stuff like that. And that's how they do it. They're literally showing you how they do it. But before they do that, they have to do something else. They need to make sure that all of you, are too tired to fight back, to keep you unconscious. So when it's an act of resistance, when you decide, you know what, I'm not going to be distracted by this, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to learn something new. I'm going to volunteer this. I'm like, when you do something that comes out of the whole programming and stuff, everything crumbles. So a lot of you is your belief. Like, they need to focus on that belief. The belief that they should maintain their power. The belief that there's nothing we can do. It's unavoidable, the AI bullshit. The belief that it's okay to give up your water for them. It's okay to poison your waters and our food for them. Because they're a priority, they're a superiority. And it's crazy, but I just had a flashback because right here is where I let go of my mother's ashes this year. It was so hard. And it just gave me a beautiful memory that I'm going to pass down to you. When I was a kid and my mom was seeing an injustice coming from a Dominican towards a Haitian person. And I feel like she hated that she was alone with me and she didn't do anything for that Haitian person. And I remember I have that memory because right after she was like, I remember coming home and she was single back then. She didn't have my stepfather. And I remember just, I think it was 5 or 6. And I have this memory like crazy. Like, she's like, yeah, no, I don't want to raise a racist. And back then I didn't understand that. I was like, Mommy, what is that? Like, you know? And it took me 30-something years to realize that with kids. And I said to myself, I'm not raising racist, fascists. I'm not doing that. We're not doing that. You have to resist every possible way. My mom did that. And she didn't understand back then. She was like, oh, I don't know if this is going to change anything. I don't know if this is going to do anything. I just can't. I don't want. I refuse to be programmed and conditioned to be racist. And she was white. So white. Super Spanish. So she knew the racism in Spanish. You know, Spanish people are fucking racist. You know, Argentina people are fucking racist. Dominicans are racist. Oh, yeah, I'm going to hear someone like, oh, we're not. Yeah, you are. I literally study in Dominican. And went to high school and stuff like that. I know, because when I came here and then saw the same pattern, the same thing, Canadians, the Quebecers, which is so weird. Yeah, Quebecers here like defending fucking French. Dude, French is colonial as fuck. You should learn the 11 languages of Quebec here. The Inuit, the First Nation. That's the language you should be learning, not French. Yeah, and they get super upset, like, oh my god, but French is dying. No, it's not. It's dying that people are aware how racist French Canadians are. That's why you guys are like, oh, too many people are waked. Because you want to continue your racist thing, like, oh, but it's French, you should be speaking French. Now nobody's like, okay. So that's what's upsetting a lot of you. And a lot of the ones who want to maintain the racist energy.
Of course! Of course!
Today I'm trying the incorporation documents for a company that was just given the go-ahead to build $10 billion with a B dollars worth of AI data centers in the province of Alberta. I got it. Let's try it and rate it 1 through 10. Negative 10 billion. That's who vetted this agreement. So in case you haven't heard, the UCP government gave the green light to a private company to build $10 billion worth of AI data centers across the province of Alberta. The company is called Beacon Data Centers Incorporated. I bought the incorporation documents so you don't have to, and I found some very alarming things that if it was my job to vet this contract, I would never let this company move forward with operations in the province of Alberta. So first and foremost, the 2 directors who are listed with their Calgary addresses are actually Irish guys. And then there's another company that they're saying is separate from them, but they're directly connected to that company. So the directors of Beacon Hill are linked to this Irish company that's holding shares. Then there's 2 other companies that are anchored in New York that they're claiming are different, but it's a collection of all the same people. So in my opinion, they're doing the paperwork hopscotch to make it appear as if they're all of these multinational companies that are doing all these incredible things, but it's literally just the same guys on different pieces of paper. But my personal favorite would be the 𝂀𝆃Real Holdings, and their business address is a P.O. box in the Cayman Islands. Now, for those of you who haven't fallen down the let's go hide money in the Cayman Islands rabbit hole like I have, there is a network of P.O. boxes in the Cayman Islands that are used exclusively for fraud. My personal favorite place that I found these P.O. boxes listed would be the Epstein files. Yeah, there are P.O. boxes listed on wire transactions in the Epstein files. Millions of dollars, including like bouncing out of those P.O. boxes to Jeffrey Epstein to the tune of millions of dollars. Like they were moving money around, and one of the places they hopscotched it was P.O. boxes in the Cayman Islands. So whoever at the UCP, whose job it was to vet this contract and make sure that this company was above board, that they had sound investors, that all of their documents make sense, took a look at these incorporation records and went, P.O. box in the Cayman Islands? Sounds legit. But what is extra crazy about 𝂀𝆃Real Holdings is it and the New York businesses that are listed on these incorporation documents actually incorporated themselves in Delaware, which is a state that hides the information of the owner of the corporation. So it's really hard to get accurate information of who the fuck owns 𝂀𝆃Real Holdings. But a guess that I have on who could possibly be the holder of 𝂀𝆃Real Holdings would be Lord 𝂀𝆃Real of Ireland. You know, the place that the directors are from. So if I had to take a wild guess on who owns 𝂀𝆃Real Holdings, I would guess Lord 𝂀𝆃Real from Northern Ireland. So Lord 𝂀𝆃Real is a unionist, and that's going to be your homework to go learn the history of Ireland and Northern Ireland and all of the things. But I will tell you that there was an assassination attempt on him by the IRA. So that'll probably tell you like where he lands on the political spectrum. So back to Beacon. Beacon is the company that will be building the data centers. 𝂀𝆃Real Holdings has 10 voting shares in Beacon. The only 2 places that I can really trace 𝂀𝆃Real Holdings to are the Cayman Islands and a company in Delaware called Harvard Business Services. And it seems like they were just paid to file the paperwork, and the paperwork was on purpose filed in a state that does not disclose information as readily or easily as other states do. And the only other place that I can find this 𝂀𝆃Real name is with a lord in Ireland, where the 2 directors of this data center company live. So if I had to take a big gamble, I would say it's probably that guy. But it's fucking mind-boggling to me that a vetting team at the behest of the UCP took a look at this paperwork and went, everything's above board. I've talked in the past about previous bills that have changed the amount of consultation time that has fast-tracked these projects. Any project that's over $250 million can get signed off on in the time it takes you to fart. Vetting and due diligence is not being done properly. If you took one look at these documents and saw how young this incorporation is, and the fact that it's basically the same people pretending to be different companies that all have voting shares, and you went and looked at their websites and saw how infantile they were, you would be like, $10 billion? You guys can't even build a website, and you want us to trust you with land and water rights for the equivalent of a $10 billion project? Now, I'm super biased in this because one time a bunch of older men wanted me to consult on this massive food project, and I had 2 meetings with them and was like, you're frauds. You're actively committing fraud. And a lot of what they were doing with their corporate structuring and a lot of what they were doing with their lending acquisition is identical to what this group of Irish dudes are doing with the UCP government. It's almost like the Beacon Project has a politician in its pocket that is explaining to this group of random Irish dudes which legislation would need to be changed to fast track this project, and is telling them what to tell ag ministers about water access so that actual laws can be changed so these data centers can access groundwater. Because, you know, right before R.J. Sigurdsson left his role as agricultural and irrigation minister, he did make changes to water laws. That's so weird. I wonder if they have a former conservative politician working with them on this project. Huh. They do. In fact, it's their vice chair of this project. Ken Hughes is a former conservative politician who is both an Alberta MP as well as a Alberta MLA. I can't write this. Ken was a member of parliament from 1988 till 1993 for the Federal Progressive Party. He was then the chair of Alberta Health Services from 2008 till 2011, and then he was voted in as an MLA for Calgary West, which is now currently Mike Ellis's riding and was previously Peter Lougheed's riding. And Ken held that MLA position from 2012 till 2014. And while Ken was an MLA, he was appointed Minister of Energy by Alison Redford. Now, if I was trying to literally change federal and provincial laws and know which laws I would need to change so I can build a data center that will literally never make money and do nothing but destroy groundwater and take up taxpayer resources, I too would appoint a former MP, former AHS chair, and former MLA to my company. Listen, I get it. There's still some of you who are licking boots who are totally convinced that AI data centers are the way of the future and we must do it because China's doing it. Baby girl, I'm just gonna let you in on a secret. That ship has sailed. The quality of data centers that are being suggested in these contracts is shit. The quality of data centers that Mark Carney has gone to foreign countries and agreed to build are trash. China is eons ahead of anything that Canada is thinking about doing. This truly is a Springfield monorail situation, and we've missed it. This door has closed. The only thing we're gonna have is contaminated water and a bunch of buildings we can't use. There's this thing I've talked about in the past called the BIS. It's the Bank of International Settlements, and it's the bank for banks. And they don't fuck around, and they recently came out with a whole article about how AI data centers are a really bad idea and they're all gonna go bust. The fact that it's already a bad idea and we are allowing a company that's not really a company with addresses in the Cayman Island to move forward on these projects, bonkers. Bonkers! If you're gonna bootleg for AI data centers, can you come up with a fun monorail style jingle? I'd really appreciate it.
You know what group didn't have to cover their faces when they had something to say? The Black Panther Party. Black Panther Party for Self-Defense was founded in Oakland, California in October of 1966 by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale. It was a black socialist organization focused on black liberation, sought to build up the black community and fight back against police brutality. And the fact that we know what the Black Panthers look like and they didn't have to wear a mask over their faces says a lot, because they had every reason to conceal their identities, because as reality would have it, they were constant targets of the United States government. Many Panthers were placed on most wanted lists or assassinated. Chairman Fred Hampton will be assassinated in 1969, and Huey P. Newton will be assassinated in 1989. Like I said, the United States government did everything they could to destroy the Black Panther Party through insidious programming like COINTELPRO. And the Black Panther Party would officially dissolve after 16 years in 1982.
Hey, FIFA is nothing but $1 billion investment. It is the new modern days Roman games, and it was designed exactly to take our eyes away from the crucial things that our lives rely on, and this is only benefiting the investors. FIFA is not about skills, it is about skills and who can and can't win a World Cup. And it's designed to make us accept this reality, who can and can't reach to be the hero or the champion of the world. This is not the first time for FIFA to prove that FIFA is corrupt. Actually, after congratulating Egypt for winning yesterday, because it's supposed to win, let me break down some stuff for you. First of all, FIFA is planning to occupy lands in Gaza Strip. Yes, occupying lands in Gaza Strip by collaborating with the Board of Peace, which is the Board of Colonizers. Nothing but this, because the USA and Israel, who are mass killing the Palestinians for decades, and especially in the last 3 years, are controlling this Board of Peace and taking lands and then making these lands as playgrounds and football academies. Of course, these lands are private for the people, ruins of Gaza, graveyards for children, and the FIFA is now planning to take them and to change them into a playground. This is the new pink washing thing. It's a football washing thing. So we don't need a match to realize that FIFA is corrupt. Okay, we know this, but we're trying to, deny it so we have fun or we cheer for our nations or for our team. We can still play without being forced to accept this robbery, right? This is by inventing a new alternative for the Asian, for the African, for all the nations that will accept, not being racist, will accept the human rights and human values. And this is what we need to invest in. It's all about our purchase, by the way. The FIFA would be nothing if we boycotted it or boycotted the companies funding it. Until we are all free and we are all equal. And that's it. Congratulations, Egypt. Again.
You get a pipeline, you get a pipeline, you get a pipeline, we all get a pipeline. And at this point, why don't we just cut out the middleman and send our taxes directly to ExxonMobil? Like maybe they can just give us their e-transfer. Last week, Carney said that the Liberal government's climate plan was too expensive for Canadians that are, quote, already struggling with affordability. And because Mr. Values cares so much about Canadians' well-being, he gracefully announced that
the changes we have made will mean that our emissions will be higher in the next few years than they were projected to be under the previous government's plan. But in my judgment, that plan was not sustainable over the long term.
According to him, what is more sustainable, though, is investing billions of taxpayer money into a new West Coast oil pipeline, and maybe even a cross-Canada Northern Shield energy corridor. What's really interesting, though, is that Smith said last year, and I quote, "To be clear, Alberta taxpayers will not be on the hook to build this pipeline." Last week, we found out that our taxpayer money will collectively cover 90% of the estimated $35 to $44 billion West Coast pipeline. And Ford also said that Ontario won't hesitate to back this incredible project. Most regular people across Canada don't want this. Even in Alberta, nearly 2/3 of people oppose taxpayer-funded pipelines, and 2/3 support more renewable energy projects to be built out. So if this is such a huge economic opportunity,
the thing to remember about pipelines is they're an excellent investment.
Why aren't companies investing? Because the private sector knows there's no business case for more pipelines in a world where renewable energies are cheaper, cleaner, and faster to deploy. And that's why they'd rather invest our money in it. I mean, countries around the world, aside from the US, of course,
The green energy scam
are rapidly transitioning away from fossil fuels and towards clean energy. So while Carney boasts about Canada increasing oil production alongside Russia and the US,
Only 2 countries have increased oil production more than we have this century. the United States, and Russia.
The rest of the world is moving on. So, Carney, Smith, Ford, taxpayers across Canada have a message for you. This isn't what we want. Stop trading our livelihoods.
More than 800 fires are burning across the country
to make oil companies richer. And if you're watching and you agree, tag them below and let's make sure our voice is heard loud and clear.
Capitalist powers have spent over a century and billions of dollars brainwashing you into thinking that communism is evil, all without you ever having to pick up a single communist text or history book that wasn't vetted by the CIA. Don't believe me? Then tell me, why is it that the word communism makes you immediately think of Soviet gulags, but when someone says capitalism, you don't think of Abu Ghraib or Guantanamo or the fact that the United States maintains the largest prison industrial complex in human history and incarcerates more people than any country on Earth? Why is it that you just know that the people of the DPRK are definitely brainwashed, but simultaneously ignore all of the publicly available CIA documents admitting to funding psychological operations and media campaigns to ideologically condition their own citizens? Why does the mere mention of communism make you think famine, but when you're presented with the 18 million intentionally starved in India under British rule and the third of the Irish population wiped out by the same people, there is no mention of capitalism? Why do you believe that communism crushes dissenting voices, but haven't even heard of Germany's suppression of the Herero and Nama People's Rebellion in Namibia that wiped out 70 and 50% of their population and forced the rest into concentration camps, or the hundreds of thousands of Kenyans murdered and tortured in the British suppression of the Mau Mau Rebellion, or the 3 million Indonesians slaughtered by the CIA-backed Suharto in the name of eradicating evil communism? Why is it that you can pinpoint Mao as a murderous leader in history, but you never think about King Leopold slaughtering and torturing 15 million Congolese, having their limbs severed all for rubber quotas, or that under Nixon, Laos became the most bombed country in history? Why is it that you can say communism killed 100 million as though it is fact, but when you're confronted with the reality that the genocide of the indigenous people of Turtle Island alone exceeds 140 million, you refuse to attribute it to capitalism? Why is it that you can recite these alleged crimes of communism without any investigation but with so much conviction, and yet none of the millions of the verified atrocities over hundreds of years ever get laid at the feet of capitalism? The answer is simple. You have been trained to accept the horrors of capitalism, to ignore that capitalism itself is built on a mountain of bones. They don't want you to know that the tools to end your exploitation are at your fingertips, that communism has been the biggest force for human liberation in history. That is why the anti-communist propaganda continues, and that is why you owe it to yourself and to the people crushed beneath that mountain of bones to start learning the truth.
Okay, my battery is dying and I want to get home with a little bit of battery. But I'll go back. I'll see if I'll continue this. But we can go on and continue this, and I probably would. It's just that Spirit is trying to get to a point here where being okay with genocide makes you the most racist person ever, fascist ever. And I think that's what my mom wanted to teach me, how in Dominican there was racism against Haitian people, jealousy even, because they had a beautiful, amazing revolution that got them free and independent. Dominican, the way that they got their independence is a little... There was 3 resistance fighters. There was always resistance for the independence, and now it feels like it's not really independent because it's full of like American energy. It's, I don't know, it's just really, really whitewash energy, and they still treat Haitians as if like they're slaves and stuff like that. We still have like, well, we call them sirvientas. We call them, or the women who raise our kids. Like, while we go to work and stuff like that, we still have sirvientas. We still have people who are Haitian descent, and they clean and take care of our kids, cook for us and stuff like that. Like, it's still like a common thing in Dominican, and pay them really minimum wage, not really, and some of them, they feel like, well, we give them some of them, like, I'm talking about the rich Dominicans, like, they usually have like a house on the side or outside of their home or their mansions for some. they have like housing for these for Haitians and stuff, especially women, or if the male has like, usually the Haitian are the guardians in Dominican, like they become guards of their door or people stealing and stuff like that, if people come steal or shit like that, or you know. So yeah, those for some who can are the privileged and lucky. Meanwhile, those who are working in farms or stuff like that are constantly scared that they're going to be deported back to Haiti. Some of them come to Dominican for work. You know, dignity, you know, because also in Haiti is, you know, their economy is designed to keep them oppressed and not thriving and not, you know, becoming better than Dominicans. Yeah, for sure. I see the superiority in my country, and that's why I even though I'm saying like I don't feel like proud to be Dominican. Same thing with here. Like I'm Canadian, but like yeah, because you elect a fucking psychopath, genocidal pedo, and friends, you know, with billionaires who are pedos, who are rapists, who are genocidal colonizers, and it's weird. And then you continue that, and then he can talk the most disgusting fucking shit in a fucking video, creating propaganda and shit. And I don't know, I just don't see, I don't know. That's why it's like, I'm gonna focus on education and anti-racism work, anti-Zionism work, and guiding you guys. Even though I show up to those spaces and call my MPs and stuff like that, but it just, for me, it doesn't feel enough. And it will never be enough until all of this is over, until we don't have to report anymore on Telegram genocide and wars. And like, because these states, and that too, the whole putting money into military bullshit, submarine or something, 100 billion. Like, you know how much the 100 billion can go into like housing for the homeless people who is rising anywhere in Canada? No. Better housing conditions too, because we have housing that is disgusting and these landlords do not want to do shit with it. Yeah. 444. You know, lower the cost of food, reduce pesticides from our food and stuff like that, so that it can reduce the amount of cancer that is rising. Make sure that we having clean water, that our waters are clean, that Indigenous people have clean water. Better sustainable energy ways, reduce fossil fuel to the like zero, due to the fact that we're dealing with climate change. But these people are doing things that are for now, right? But they're not thinking of the future. And if they are thinking of the future, they're just thinking, oh, we're not going to be alive, so it doesn't matter. Yeah.
The changes we have made will mean that our emissions will be higher in the next few years than they were projected to be under the previous government's plan. But in my judgment, that plan was not sustainable over the long term.
Parts of Canada look like they were ripped right out of an apocalyptic movie today. And as Canadians fled flaming homes, as innocent wildlife burns and suffocates, Prime Minister Mark Carney took to social media. Oh, not to post about any of that, though. He posted, quote, "The world wants to do more with Canada. Our MOU with Alberta will unlock those opportunities in energy and create lasting benefits for Canadians." That's right, as Canada is burning, he is boasting about a deal that's set to make the climate crisis even worse. What's something stronger than tone deaf? And here's the thing, right? To say that Carney has been a failure when it comes to the climate crisis is an understatement. He stood alongside a beaming Alberta premier as the two announced Danielle Smith's new proposed oil pipeline to the West Coast. He's admitted that Canada is abandoning its 2030 emissions reductions targets, telling Canadians we can't afford to take the kind of bold climate action that would allow us to meet them, but we can afford this, I guess. Carney is also all in on AI despite its thirst for water and energy, and is peeling back protections to keep endangered species alive in the face of corporate greed. In short, Carney is sending us careening faster into climate dystopia. Or, as Ali 𝓂𝆃Real of Environmental Defense told me, quote, Prime Minister Mark Carney is intent on taking a wrecking ball on Canada's climate ambitions while clearing the way for increasing fossil fuel production, which will only worsen the climate disasters and the costs Canadians are already facing. But don't worry, folks, Carney has a plan. Well, Carney, at the time I am filming this piece, which is 8 p.m. Eastern, has yet to acknowledge the dystopian climate crisis-induced horrors that are currently upending the lives of Canadians. He did post on Tuesday afternoon about an agreement for cutting emissions. Quote, the Pathways project will be the world's largest carbon capture, utilization, and storage project built right here in Alberta. There's just one problem. The carbon capture project that Carney is touting as the salve to concerns about the emissions from a new oil pipeline, it's full of more hot air than Canada's skies right now. And if we're going to actually address these burning skies, we're gonna have to see through the smokes of Carney's claims. Because, according to 𝓂𝆃Real of Environmental Defense, quote, PM Carney is trying to greenwash his fossil fuel expansion plans with carbon capture and storage. So let me debunk this real quick. Carbon capture and storage is basically exactly what it sounds like. The technology captures carbon before it can slip away into the atmosphere. Then the company takes that captured carbon and stores it. There are other options too, such as utilizing it to make other products. So far, the technology has proven to be incredibly expensive and very inefficient at making a significant dent in emissions. For example, the Pathways Alliance, which is the group of oil sands companies that are boosting the Pathways project, they're asking for $6.5 billion in public funding to build the pipeline that would carry this captured carbon and the storage facility where it would then be kept. For that price, the project could see a net reduction of about 10 to 12 megatons of emissions by 2030. Meanwhile, the annual emissions from Alberta's oil sands, according to the latest federal figures, were 89 megatons in 2023. Not only that, but these carbon-carrying pipelines don't come without their own risks. In 2020, a pipeline carrying this captured carbon dioxide ruptured in Mississippi. The carbon dioxide from the pipeline moved through the community, poisoning people as it displaced the oxygen that they need to breathe. More than 45 people were hospitalized and 200 had to evacuate. 𝓂𝆃Real told me, quote, Pathways CCS will not mitigate the pollution from existing oil production, let alone the expanded pollution to fill a new 1 million barrel a day pipeline. He also added that, quote, First Nations farmers and landowners have opposed the Pathways project given its significant health and safety risks. All this, and here's the wild part, the carbon that's captured can also be used to extract even more oil. In fact, that is the most common thing that it's used for. In a process called enhanced oil recovery, companies can take that captured carbon and inject it into depleted oil wells, pushing out and eventually burning even more oil that would have otherwise stayed in the ground. About 73% of captured CO2 is used this way every year. Meanwhile, here in Canada, our government is planning to give oil and gas companies a tax credit if they use the captured carbon to extract even more oil. Yes, really. This has led Seth Klein, a climate change writer and activist and full disclosure brother-in-law to NDP leader Abby Lewis, to a conclusion about the Prime Minister. He told me, quote, Carney is clearly not the climate guy many people thought. He pointed to the fact that a centerpiece of the government's climate spending these days comes in the form of clean economy investment tax credits. Quote, the basic idea of these credits is that if and when a company undertakes a capital expenditure to lower carbon emissions, the government will rebate them with a tax credit worth 15 to 40% of their investment. The federal government is so enamored by this model that in its most recent spring economic update, it extended the credits and stretched credulity by offering them for LNG investments and even enhanced oil recovery CCS projects, meaning making the credit available to projects that use captured carbon to frack yet more oil. On top of all of that, Klein warned that even if carbon capture and storage was able to capture almost all oil and gas production emissions, which, as we already went over, it doesn't even come close to doing, it would, quote, still be a fraudulent climate solution. Quote, that's because 80 to 85% of the carbon pollution from oil and gas isn't from the production, it's from when that oil and gas reaches its destination and is burned. And CCS does nothing to reduce those emissions. It's like being comforted by a tobacco CEO telling you that none of the workers in his factory smoke. Who cares? So all in all, it's clear that Carney's climate promises around carbon capture and storage are basically just him blowing smoke. Meanwhile, conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is filming videos mocking people who care about the climate crisis. And Ontario Premier Doug Ford cut the province's budget for emergency forest firefighting. Politicians from Canada's biggest parties are failing us on the climate crisis. That's why it's up to Canadians to remind politicians that we still care about having a livable planet. We won't be fooled by greenwashing and fear-mongering around Donald Trump. We need to get organized and make our voices heard. As the dystopian scenes today have made clear, our future depends on it. What do you think of all this?
I'd like to show you the color of the sky in Toronto right now. There we go. It's brown, it's orange.
Of course, we know why the skies are this color. It's because whole communities are literally burning as we speak in northwestern Ontario. I could talk about the fact that this is sponsored and brought to you by fossil fuel companies. We could also talk about the fact that this is being brought to us by politicians like Mark Carney, who is systematically destroying our climate. We could also talk about Doug Ford, who has absolutely decimated funding for wildfire response personnel. But the aspect of this that I do want to talk about that isn't being well reported on is specifically which communities are burning right now. When we look at the list of communities who are under mandatory evacuations, literally as we speak, do you notice a trend? First Nation, First Nation, First Nation, First Nation. We've said it before, we will continue to say it again. The communities and the people who are the most impacted by climate change, who will continue to be the most impacted by climate change, are Indigenous peoples and or peoples of the global south. And what I find disturbing about the mainstream coverage of these wildfires is that very few news outlets are highlighting the fact that this is impacting primarily First Nations communities. And news has certainly not spoken about the fact, as they never do, that this is part of the ongoing genocide against First Nations peoples in so-called Canada. There's a reason why APTN News, which is an Indigenous news channel, is the only news channel to actually use the real name of so-called Collins First Nation. There's a reason why this video of Chief Cindy Woodhouse talking about the fires is pretty much only available on APTN News. There's a reason why the MPs who are talking about the fact that this is a disaster because it has erased, quote unquote, an entire First Nations community. There's a reason why the only MPs who seem to be using that language are Indigenous MPs. These types of disasters always get framed by settlers as natural disasters or as disasters that are the result of one individual politician's isolated lack of action. But in fact, this is the result of systems, capitalism, fascism, and colonialism. It is no coincidence that in so-called Canada and across the globe, that billionaires, capitalists, corrupt politicians, oligarchs, that they deliberately feed into violent systems, whether that be indirect violence or direct violence that targets Indigenous peoples. So today, as we grapple with a land that is burning, read Indigenous news sources, listen to Indigenous voices, not as a means of performative consumption, but as a way of countering this narrative to really understand what is happening.
Thousands of Native people have been displaced, and the news only talks about Toronto. Native communities are being destroyed by the ongoing wildfires in Ontario. And the problem is that when people focus on this, a lot of the news is centered around what's going on in Toronto. But for many First Nations, this isn't just wildfire season. This is the loss of lands, community, and generations of history. One of the Native First Nations communities that was affected had the fire blaze through in under an hour, and the families had to escape by boat. Much of the community has been destroyed, and some families only had minutes to decide what they were going to save. And Collins First Nation is not alone. Thousands of First Nations across Northern Ontario have been affected. Many nations of First Nations natives have been experiencing evacuation orders, as well as immediate wildfire threats, with many of these being fly-in communities, meaning there's no highways to just drive away. So evacuations depend on boat and plane availability, making the situation even more of an emergency and even more dangerous. As of mid-July, more than 1,600 Native First Nation people have been displaced, and nationwide, even more have been evacuated. And this loss goes beyond just the buildings, because the boreal forest is a sacred space. It holds the medicine, the teachings. It's where the foraging and hunting happens. And when fires like this occur, it also affects the waterways and the fishing. So when forests burn like this, it's not just about loss of homes and smoke inhalation, it's yet another native loss of land. And Native First Nations people are disproportionately more affected because a lot of these communities are remote or surrounded by dense forests that then catch on fire. And natives don't have the same emergency infrastructure or even the resources to go elsewhere. And something that comes up a lot when we talk about forest fires is that native stewardship over the land is important, because if natives were able to do the controlled burning, which is how we've done things for thousands of years, the forest fires that we're seeing would not be as severe. They would not be as catastrophic because they would be controlled. But colonial governments have restricted this. Now we're seeing smoke spread across Canada and the northeastern United States, with smoke reaching as far east as New York City. So while this is a disaster for everyone, because the dangers of smoke inhalation, regardless of where you are, is real, for Native communities, they've lost their ancestral territories again, in something that could have been prevented. So don't let this just become another headline. And don't let people just talk about it from the non-Native perspective. Because when an entire First Nation burns, the loss can be felt by all of us.
Meanwhile, a lot of us who are doing this type of work, we're thinking of the future, that we want to live this world better than it is now, than we got here. We want to live it better than it is, right? You do not have the same mentality as them. And this is why you get the gift of intuition. They don't. This is why they build AI, because they need to extract that beautiful energy and call it progress. All of you have this beautiful gift, talent, discernment, higher consciousness, be able to eat like so much that you can see on the unconscious and make it conscious. And like this, even as a kid, especially when you're a kid. This is why they're threatened by kids. This is why they do what they do to kids. Do you get it yet? We also live in like a kind of cannibalistic, So a lot of you realizing that the conspiracy theories, you're like, oh my God, most of them are right. Yeah. So start going back to all the people that you decided that, I don't know what they were saying, they're crazy. They're too into the stars, they're too deep, they're too woke. Take a step back and go back. You're going to need those people around you. These people have learned the tactic of our enemy. These people are protecting and defending the working class. They always have. Snowden, they're Snowden. Bless that dude. 737, protected intensely. A lot of you're lied to about communism, about socialism. You need to wake up. We need to build better system, and we need to unite, and we need to get together, and we need to put like a money pot, like a mutual aid pot. Because I feel like if all of us, billions of people, take our finances and combine it together, bueno, and then build better. But first, I think a lot of you need to learn how to defend yourself, because they are building all these racist, separatists, white supremacists, fucking disgusting, KKK. And they're gonna acquit them, they're gonna give them all their funds, they're gonna make them, attack people, especially those who are speaking the truth, because these are uneducated people as well. and they want to remain educated. They don't give a fuck about education. All they care is about their money and how they can maintain their superiority. Some of them are narcissists, sadists. So a lot of you, if you don't never have to deal with a narcissist or sadist or survive an abusive situation or violence or any type of abuse, you're a threat. You're not, how do I say this? Not a threat. You're more like easily manipulated and controlled, basically. You can be easily used by them. And I refuse to let my community or anybody be dealing with people like that. So stick around here. I love you so much. I'm going to continue exposing the energy because the more I'm in my truth, clarity, and demanding justice, the more I'm getting more channel messages, more information is being exposed, more truth, and the more I'm reading books about how these elite work. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say around here because I can't say too much. But yeah. So a lot of you who are saying, be anti-racist and anti-fascist and start doing work outside of the status quo. We have to. And free Palestine, free Congo, free Sudan, and free all the oppressed. And I'll see you later.